All right, let's get it. Drive time. Monday afternoon, 10 minutes past the hour, 2 o'clock. It is a lovely day outside. It's about 80 degrees and sunny here in downtown Salt Lake City, Utah. About 107 degrees in the studio. But we traverse on. We are pirates. Okay? It's masonry in here. Just swinging the pick and the axe mine for the next, well, not 4 hours today. We say goodnight early, don't we? We're going to say goodnight about 5 o'clock tonight. And then we're going to send it over to ESPN Radio's live coverage of the NBA Draft Lottery. Could be one of the biggest days in the history of the Utah Jazz. It could be. I believe Ashley Smith, Ryan's wife, of course, Smith Entertainment Group, I believe Ashley will be the Jazz rep. Our buddy Andy Larson, boots on the ground from the Salt Lake Tribune. I'm sure we'll get Andy on this week to talk about his experience. Jazz have a 14% chance of grabbing the number one overall pick. They cannot fall past 5, okay? So a lot of analysts believe this is a 5-player draft, so the Jazz should be able to grab a big-time talent, no matter where they're drafted. Of course, the prize is young Cooper Flagg from Duke University. Cooper turned 18, I believe it was in January or December, so he's still very young. But Dylan Harper, Ace Bailey, VJ Edgecombe, a lot of other names, and we'll talk about them on the show today to get you ready for tonight and help you understand and get to know potentially who these players are. And hopefully, Jazz will be able to get a little luck in a way that they have never been able to get luck over the course of their 50-year existence. So, big day, big night for Jazz fans. We got you covered on the show today. Then, of course, we'll have the coverage live. And then, obviously, the NBA playoffs continue to be phenomenally entertaining. But the big news that broke today is, according to Shams Charania from ESPN, Giannis Antetokounmpo, for the first time, is open to a trade. Now, we'll get into this because, topically, with the NBA Draft Lottery today, there's some interesting synergies as far as the position the Jazz find themselves in now and why nobody this morning that I listened to or watched, going over the myriad of trade options for Giannis, even uttered the Jazz as an option, okay? So we'll get into some of that stuff on the show today and talk some NBA basketball and talk some big-picture NBA playoff stuff. After the lottery is over tonight, it will be time for more playoff basketball. This might be the biggest game the New York Knicks have played since 1999, and I'm not even kidding. I know it's only the second round, but that's how anemic this organization has been more or less for about 25 years. And I'm going to go out on a limb. I'm not a hot take guy. You guys know that by now. But I think whoever wins the game tonight wins this series. Okay, we'll get into it. Knicks, Celtics, 5:30 Mountain Time on ESPN. Of course, the Knicks still lead that series 2-1 after getting smoked at home by Boston. Knicks went up to TD Garden, grabbed a couple, then lost at MSG. Talked about this yesterday. Boston is historically good on the road. They're actually much better on the road than at home this year. I still am very skeptical of the Knicks' ability to get a couple of more games against this team unless injuries happen. And then, interesting game. Minnesota leads the Warriors 2-1 now. And Golden State, they've just got to get one more and give Steph a little more time for him to come back. So 2 really big games in pro basketball tonight. Fun week last week, if you are a fan of the Utah Mammoth, the NHL team we have in our market, where a week ago we found out that the Utah Mammoth will be picking 4th in the NHL draft. They moved up 10 spots, so the Jazz will try to duplicate that luck tonight. And then we have the official name change from the Utah Hockey Club to the Utah Mammoth. Stanley Cup playoffs rolling along. I believe I read today almost half of the games have been decided by only 1 goal. A lot of late-game heroics and such, so we'll do a little NHL. On the program today, some NFL offseason stuff. Looks like the Bengals and Trey Hendrickson have cut off contract talks, which is wild to me. Trey has more sacks than any player in the NFL over the past couple of years. So some NFL offseason, some rookie mini camp. We saw Caleb Lohner for the first time in a Denver Bronco jersey. And Shedeur Sanders is throwing in Cleveland. So a lot of the rookies are getting their feet wet, learning what it's like to be a professional football player. RSL with a draw over the weekend, another wonder strike from Diego Luna, who now has 7 goals through 12 games, and that kid is just, his star is shining. It was another great goal with his left foot off the post and went into the back of the net. RSL with another red card. Our guy Willie Goals, shout out Willie Agata, red card for Willie, so he'll be out on Wednesday against Portland. So we'll do a little soccer on the show today as well. We are jam-packed. Good to be back on air after taking Friday off. Was down south playing a little golf in St. George. Beautiful time down there as always. Maybe we'll do a little story time later for board, but we're jam-packed. First guest today will be Kurt Schmidt, the technical director for Real Salt Lake. Get Kurt's take on the current form of the club and his hopes for the rest of the way, and maybe a little peek into the summer transfer window the next time RSL is able to add talent to the group. Going to bring in Tom Haberstroh today, NBA Daily Assist style. We'll do some draft lottery. We'll do some jazz. We'll get ready for the games tonight and talk about this news that Giannis might be on the move. Good friend of the show, Tony Parks, the voice of the Salt Lake Bees, will join us in the studio. We'll do a lot of jazz, a lot of lottery with Tony. So we'll get to a bunch of stuff with Tony on the program today. And then we will say goodnight at 5 o'clock straight up and send you live to ESPN's coverage of the draft lottery. So Kurt Schmidt, Tom Haberstroh, Tony Parks, me, Spence Checketts, all of you, the great listeners, and that guy, Porter Larson, on a Monday. Happy Monday, buddy. How was your weekend?
It was swell. How was yours?
It was good.
In the desert?
In the desert. We had nice weather, 3 straight days of golf.
Nice.
Little tread off the tires, little lower back. You know, that's what happens when you get older. But it was
I was
fun.
going to say, did you play 54 holes of golf?
Is that 3 rounds?
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, 3 straight days. So
Wow.
54 total holes. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
One more, and we'll get that score up there. We'll see how close you are to contend for a major.
I'm not close to contending for a major. I did break 80 at Copper Rock, though. That felt
Nice.
good. I shot a 78. That felt
Okay. That's a legitimately good score, regardless kind of the an easy course if you're still shooting, lower single digits. That's impressive. Nice job.
Michael Jordan, hired as a commentator on NBC once upon a time. Didn't you caddy for him or something? Am I remembering that correctly?
There's a few kind of random connections, right? My dad did electrical for him for a moment, and then I ended up with the connections at a golf course and worked with him. I was a member services coordinator at one point, so I literally was sometimes taking Michael Jordan to his tee box, and sometimes whiskey and cigars to them as well. And I'll be honest with you, I'm super surprised. That guy likes his retirement. Even when he was gainfully employed with the Hornets thing, he
was never around.
I think I told you this story on air before. The off season where they had the most cap room ever, and they just signed Nick Batum. He was golfing that whole week. I watched him. I was there, and if you're MJ, you have an opportunity with your person to have an effect on those types of situations, and he just didn't really. It's funny, the most that I've seen him put into something in his retirement is NASCAR. He has 2 NASCAR teams that he's pretty involved in, and this is a difference there. The media thing is certainly new. I'm going to be interested in it because, like you, I just don't know how much he's going to put into it and how interested he might be. But that might be a really fun Michael Jordan to get on a mic for a few shows.
Oh, for sure. And if you need a little liquid courage, because I think he's
yes.
Is it tequila with him or is it whiskey?
It's tequila, rum, whiskey.
Okay. Right.
It I don't know. It depends on which crew he's with because there's it looks like a crew overtakes the golf course when you're with MJ because you don't have 2 people to a cart. They all have their own. And they all just kind of drive wherever they want. It's kind of fun to see because they play 8 people on a hole at the same time. And it's kind of just a party out there.
It's good to be Michael Jordan. Do you remember when randomly Karl Malone just started showing up around the Jazz? It was I should be an assistant coach here.
I should be involved. Yeah.
And Randy Rigby, bless his heart, sweetest man in the world, is sure, why wouldn't we want Karl involved? And I remember when I heard the announcement, I'm that won't last. Being a coach is hard. It's hard work to be a coach in the NBA. I don't care who you are. And after 2 weeks, Karl was yeah, you know what? I kind of like hunting in my freedom. Best of luck, Derek Favors, Enes Kanter, Rudy Gobert. I'm not doing this.
Right.
Part of me feels like MJ is going to realize what it's like to have to show up on time and not have the freedom that he typically has. And I'm not sure that it'll last. We'll see.
That's kind of where I'm at. I'm excited for it. I think it'll be cool. It'll be fun. It'll be entertaining. But I do wonder if it's long-standing, if it's kind of this one-off thing, because, like you, I've noticed Mike likes his free time, his retirement.
Yes, he does. All right. We'll bring in Kurt Schmidt today, right out of the gates, but on a Monday afternoon. Before we get to Kurt, courtesy of our friends at Prize Picks, it is time now for your opening tip.
Welcome to The Drive with Spence Checketts on Utah's #1 sports talk. Now into the studios of ESPN 700 to set the scene for the show. The opening tip of the drive is brought to you by Prize Picks. Use the code ESPN 700 and run your game with Prize Picks.
Cash in on the basketball playoffs with Prize Picks. Don't miss your last chance to add your favorite players from the court to your Prize Picks lineup. Whether it's points, rebounds, or assists, take your pick of more or less for a shot to win up to 2,000 times your cash today. You can turn your playoff hot takes into tickets to basketball's championship series. Starting with the play-in round, every lineup you make on Prize Picks will enter you into the Take-Two ticket sweepstakes, which could get you and a +1, a VIP trip to the ship. So here's what you do. Download the Prize Picks app today. Use the promo code ESPN700. And when you play that first $5 lineup, they're just going to hook you up with $50. So download the Prize Picks app today. Use the promo code ESPN700. They'll hook you up with $50. I'm going more on Peyton Pritchard, 9.5 points tonight. That feels like easy money. I'm going more on Jimmy Butler, 1.5 3-point shots made. I'm going to go less on Karl Anthony Towns, 19.5 points. And give me more on Jalen Brunson, 27.5 points. I think Jalen's going to have a big game tonight. Prize Picks, run your game. All right, coming up in, let's see, less than 3 hours, about 2 hours and 40 minutes and change, is tonight's NBA Draft Lottery. Now, what you don't want to be is a fan of a team where this is the most exciting night on your calendar. You don't want to have that as part of your reality if you're a fan of a pro basketball team. But that's where we're at with the Utah Jazz. It is a big, big night because it really could shape the future and change the trajectory that the Jazz are on right now for a few different reasons. The most obvious reason is Cooper Flagg is awesome and very young and built as a modern-day cornerstone-type player with great size and multiple positions, can guard a bunch of different positions, can put it on the floor. He is already a capable outside shooter. He finishes with force at the rim, and he's a really, really good defensive player, both at the rim and on the perimeter where you can switch and have a bunch of different actions. Like, simply getting Cooper Flagg would be a massive, massive thing for this organization. But today is interesting to discuss what tonight could mean, okay? So if you missed it about, 2 or 3 hours ago, Shams Charania comes out with his tweet that Giannis Antetokounmpo is now open to being traded from the Milwaukee Bucks to a new team. Reminds me a little bit of Kevin Garnett for you older NBA fans. KG, the big ticket back in the day, gave Minnesota about a decade and change of his career and was awesome for them. And they never were able to build a team around him that was championship worthy. They had one really good team that went to the Western Conference Finals when they made some moves to grab Sam Cassell and Latrell Sprewell, former Knick. He was in Minnesota with KG, and they went to the conference finals. But that was as close as KG got to the trophy in Minnesota. So after a decade, he's like, look, I'm getting older. I gave you 10 great years, and I want to go try to win a championship, so I would like you to trade me to a contender. And that's when Danny Ainge pulled off one of the great trades of that era, grabbing Kevin Garnett in Boston to pair with Paul Pierce. And then they made the deal to grab Ray Allen, and that was a really, really good Celtic team that won a championship and made KG an NBA champ, right? So, yeah, the difference here is Giannis has won a championship in Milwaukee. But after that 2021 championship season, they have one playoff win. They've won one series since their trophy, and they've lost in the first round for 3 straight years. Now, Mark Lazary is a very well-respected owner that appears to be a very decent man. And kind of unlike the Denver Nuggets, who I still think when Nikola Jokic's career is over, I think we're going to have a real conversation about whether or not Denver did enough to surround Jokic for a long enough period of time to see exactly what he could be as the cornerstone of a team with really good teammates. Remember, Nikola Jokic has still not played with another all-star in Denver. Yet, they're still in the playoffs. They're tied 2-2 with Oklahoma City. I don't think they're going to win the series, but a couple of years removed from winning a championship. It's the brilliance of Jokic, but Denver, to me, has done him a big-time disservice. Milwaukee did not do that with Giannis. Once they realized they needed to change something to probably give themselves the best chance of holding on to Giannis, they went and they made a big-time trade and paid a lot of money and are on the hook for a lot of money for our local legend, Damian Lillard, who unfortunately will probably miss all of next season. And if he comes back, will he look the same? You know, at that age, and Achilles is just a tough thing. So I understand this dynamic with Giannis, especially if Dame's on the sideline. Like, you just don't have a chance. And Milwaukee does not have a lot of draft capital. The next trade that they can, the next pick that they can trade, they can trade one of their 2031 or their 2032 first rounders. So the next pick they can trade is in 6 and 7 years. You cannot trade consecutive first-round picks. That's why they could only choose one or the other. But they don't have a lot to improve their team with. So the reason I bring it up through the paradigm and the prism of, okay, tonight's draft lottery, ultimately, after I saw the tweet from Shams, I went and listened to some Sirius XM NBA radio guys. I turned on some of the daily ESPN and Fox NBA shows. And ultimately, I feel like almost every team was mentioned that is in this space of having a compendium, shout out Trey, of assets, picks, salary cap space. Like Brooklyn was brought up over and over and over, and nobody brought up the Jazz, okay? So, and here's why. It's actually pretty simple. All these other teams, so the other interesting dynamic here is the front runner, according to what, Bobby Marks was talking about today, he believes it's Oklahoma City, okay? So the other thing that's being brought up here, where the Jazz should at least have a mention, is we're not hearing Miami. We're not hearing New York. We're not hearing Los Angeles. We're hearing Oklahoma City, smaller market than the Jazz, smaller market than Salt Lake. We're hearing San Antonio. I always remind everybody, San Antonio is actually a smaller market. And I don't mean to disparage these other cities, and maybe I can get a little defensive because I've lived in Salt Lake for over 20 years now. And I understand the oddities of our market and the dynamic that makes this kind of a interesting place for certain people to try to exist. Salt Lake is so much better than San Antonio. It's so much better than Oklahoma City, places I've been multiple times. And so ultimately what this comes down to is Milwaukee is probably not going to be in a space where they just want to go all in and then rebuild. They're probably looking for a trade partner like Oklahoma City, who actually has more draft assets than the Jazz. But here's the rub, okay? Here's where the Jazz have failed. Oklahoma City, throughout their rebuild, they have stockpiled good young players. So if you're Milwaukee and Sam Presti calls you about Giannis, you can say, okay, I want 5 unprotected picks, okay? 3 to 5, 3 picks, 2 swaps. It's probably going to take, like Brooklyn traded Mikal Bridges for 5 picks. Giannis obviously is twice the player. Mikal Bridges is, all due respect. It's probably going to take 5 picks, and then they're probably going to say, okay, and we got to talk about Jalen Williams. Sam will say SGA is untouchable, right? But he can, Sam can throw in a Jalen Williams. Maybe even you look at Chet, right? You do that because Giannis is 30 years old. He takes incredible care of his body. You do trade a Jalen Williams or a Chet Holmgren and 5 unprotected first for 5 years of Shea and Giannis. You do that. Okay, so the Jazz have the draft assets, but who are you really going to if you're Milwaukee and you can talk to San Antonio, who has a lot of really good, exciting young players. You can talk to Oklahoma City, who has a lot of good, really exciting young players. Who are you going to ask for from the Jazz outside of marketing? And I love Lowry, but that's not enough to get it done. Jalen Williams is a better player than Lowry Markkanen, in my opinion. So while the Jazz have all of these assets and clean books, they just don't have tangible pieces. They don't have good young players. Like, nobody knows who Keontae is, and I think Isaiah's got a little something. But that's what makes tonight interesting. And that's what makes tonight massive if you're a Jazz fan. Because what could change everything right away is the Jazz getting the #1 overall pick. Because when you have good young players, other players want to come play for you. Right now, there's nobody that is attracting anybody that's on the Jazz roster. So that's what makes tonight really, really big. We're about 2.5 hours away. We'll say goodnight at 5 o'clock and bring you live coverage of the NBA Draft Lottery. But we'll switch gears. We'll talk a little RSL. Kurt Schmidt is our first guest on a Monday edition of the program. So don't go anywhere. Keep it right here on ESPN 700. I'm always anxious to find out who draws the short stick, the short straw that from the RSL front office and coaching staff, and they're forced to join us for their occasional hit. And today's unlucky guest, coming off a draw, another goal from Diego, technical director for the local soccer club here for Real Salt Lake. Always fun to catch up with Kurt Schmidt. Kurt, happy Monday, buddy. How we doing?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm good, buddy. I'm good. Right out of the gates, is Diego better already than you ever thought he could be? Like when you first saw him play and started to scout him, has he even superseded your expectations for him?
That's a good question. He's definitely better now than I thought he would be probably the first time I saw him play. But as we scouted him more in USL, and for me, the moment where it really clicked was actually down in Argentina. He was at a U20 camp, and I was down there scouting some games, and one of them was the U20s playing River Plate reserves. And so he came off the bench in that game, and they didn't really bring a lot of strikers. So I think they only had 1 9 in the group. And so the 9 started, and then they brought Diego on at the 9. And he just changed the whole game. And obviously it was the reserves at River, so it wasn't maybe the most elite level at the moment, but it's still a pretty good level for that age group. And watching him sort of change the game in that environment just gave me a real glimpse of what he could do if given the chance and given the right platform. And honestly, he's obviously continuing to fill that. I don't want to say he's done. I think he's continuing to grow. You see it every week, but that was the moment for me. And I got some really good feedback on him from a friend of mine who was actually his coach in El Paso at the time. Who couldn't speak more highly of him as a person, as a character, and thought that he was someone that really had the drive to succeed, and I put a lot of trust in that as well. So that was sort of the story there.
Are you aware that there is a very famous Mexican actor and director named Diego Luna? I just did a little Google search, and I just learned that today. Are you aware of that?
I am aware. I had to approve Diego's the meeting of the two Diegos a few weeks ago.
Oh, look at that. All right. Well, learn something new every day. Let me follow up. And you referenced when you were first scouting him that the club he was with did bring him on as a 9. And more often than not, at least from my prism, he has been asked by you guys to be more of a distributor and more of a creative player. And you just look at his stats over the years, more assists. I mean, it's not like he hasn't been scoring goals, but he's scoring goals at such a high level. Did you know he had this type of goal scoring prowess? Because for me, it's always been more of like a central attacking midfielder that provides service to the strikers up top.
Yeah, I mean, that's sort of the rap for an attacking midfielder is they're supposed to be more provider than goal scorer. But when he first started in El Paso as a very young player, he was playing like a left-sided forward, essentially.
Oh, okay.
Not really a 10, not really a 9, but he would come off the left where, he actually played a lot of time for us as well and just create a lot of danger, be very goal-oriented. And so, I think that was part of his appeal in USL. Part of the thing that, one of the things that drew people and drew us to him was his ability to be productive in front of goal. And I think, the question is always, okay, a player is productive at a lower level. Can he be productive at a higher level? And that's the big question mark. And obviously, if he doesn't score goals at the lower level, then the odds of him scoring goals at our level are not very high. But even players that do score, let's say in the USL, don't always translate. And so we knew he had that potential in him. And I think, honestly, the first year and a half or so with us, it was actually about getting him to be more comfortable being that goal-oriented. And I know Pablo's talked a lot about getting him to work on the defensive side, and I think that was also a big part of it. But on the attacking side, it wasn't just about getting your touches on the ball. If he's receiving passes, side-yard passes from center backs, like that wasn't something that we were interested in or that he should be interested in. It was about being decisive in the final third and getting him to add those counting stats to his line. And so he's obviously done that a lot last year and then so far for us this year. But yeah, that's one of the things that drew us to him, honestly.
21 years old. So of course he is not close to a finished product. What if anything, and there's part of this, Kurt, that kind of reminds me of a conversation that people used to have about Nicky Raimondo, where, if Nick was 6'3", 6'4", probably a European keeper, right? Probably a guy that could have played in a number of leagues and maybe the biggest of leagues. And Diego suddenly is not going to change his body composition. He's not going to become Anderson Julio fast. So, I guess that's just some context before I ask you, what do you think Diego needs to improve upon should he have these aspirations of playing in some of the bigger leagues in Europe?
I don't think it's about adding, a whole lot of different things to his game than what you see from him right now. It's really about being more consistent and having consistent quality to his decision making in the final third and his actions in the final third, especially. But once you show you can do these things, for a young player, the real challenge, and one of the reasons people usually like, quote, experienced players more, is because those players have learned how to be consistent and how to perform at a consistent level on a consistent basis. And so that's really what it is for him. And so as he's building on, his statistical seasons, it's just about being consistent, from season to season, from game to game, from play to play within the game, and being switched on all the time, and just, being a guy that people can rely on. So, I think he's showing that now for sure, but it isn't about adding a whole lot of different things. I think he's shown the player he is and things he can do. And it's just about continuing to do them over and over again.
Again, I'll bring up the fact that he's 21, just because it feels like you guys are asking him to just shoulder a big load. And, tonight, Kurt, is the NBA draft lottery. So we were doing some NBA earlier, and Giannis wants out of Milwaukee, and, kind of a conversation about teams relying heavily on one individual talent. And then it's the job of people like you, whose decisions are intertwined into constructing the roster, to make sure the talent is supported. Right. So do you feel like he has enough around him, or do you feel like you guys are asking him to do a lot?
Asking him to do a lot at the moment. I think he's picking up some slack, whether we're, explicitly saying, hey, you got to do this or else, or anything like that. I don't know, but he is picking up a lot of slack right now, which is great for us, and it's great for him and his development. I think we can continue to build pieces around him. I think he's got some good pieces around him, but we can continue to add those pieces that can highlight him a little bit, that can push him, and that can contribute to success. Yeah, absolutely.
All right. So last year, summer transfer window, you guys brought in a number of pieces, and I can remember talking to both you and Pablo and Jason, Tony, and everybody about the decision to bring in Diogo, who on your roster is the only designated player. And there were moments last year where you could see the quality, but it felt like the walking line was Diogo needs a preseason with Pablo and with this staff so he can acclimate to what we're asking him to do, so he can acclimate to playing at altitude, so he can acclimate to playing in Major League Soccer. At what point, Kurt, do we kind of look at this entire situation and wonder, whether or not he is going to get this right? And maybe there are things I'm not seeing. And again, there are moments, right? And that's why I don't want to be I approach this job as more observation and not conclusion or dismiss or anoint. I mean, this is a long, long season. It's a season that is a marathon, as we talked about before. But at what point do we kind of look at the thing and wonder or not if maybe the evaluation was off? Is that fair?
Yeah, look, players all adapt at different rates, and I'm not someone who thinks preseason is a magical period of time where everyone can discover their form and become the player that they want, that we want them to be. I think it's really just about time with a coach, time with your teammates, and time in a league. And more time equals more adaptation, which equals more comfort and confidence, and should equal higher quality play. And different players need different amounts of time. Some players can hit the ground running. I was in Seattle, we signed Nico Sladero, and he hit the ground running day one and didn't need any time to adapt to his teammates or to the league, and became an instant difference maker. And, there's some players that need 6 or 12 months to adapt, and maybe their second year, that's when they really blossom and bloom. So you look at Diogo, and I think he brings a lot of quality to the team. He's working defensively. I know within what Pablo's asking, and he adds a lot of quality on the ball in the build-up. When he's on the ball, his decisions are generally better. His technical ability is good. He's getting himself in really good spots. I was actually talking to someone about this today, in terms of some of his statistics and underlying numbers. And, he's getting into spots where he's creating chances, with expected assists, or he's getting chances himself with expected goals. And right now he's underperforming those numbers. And that's an objective analysis at this point, right? Those two specific numbers, especially, he's underperforming them now. And I think the expectation that he would have for himself and that we have for him is that he at least, gets at par, right? And scores and assists what can be expected based on the quality chances he's getting and setting up for others. And those expected assists is kind of a weird one because, he plays a great ball. I think he's going to play the ball into Willie. Willie doesn't shoot. Okay, there's no expected assist there. So it's a little tough one too, because you can't do both ends of it. I think there are some moments where he'll demand more of himself and we'll demand more of him. And, we're always evaluating everyone and their fit within the team and how they're helping us. And that type of pressure is no different to him or anyone else on the team. But yeah, I think the expectation is that he meets those expectations from the standpoint of those, expected goals, expected assists. And I think he's adding the defensive work rate that Pablo's looking for. If he's not, Pablo's holding him accountable to that. And so that part's been really positive. He's been bought in. He just needs to execute in those final moments.
Good breakdown there. Same question about Dom Markzuk. Now, I understand that Dom has some personal challenges right now, and I always try to be fair. These are humans that have families, and they have issues like everybody else. So I don't know if you can provide any color and context to that. If so, feel free. But I kind of feel the same way about Dom that I feel about Diogo, where there are times where he'll play in a cross or he'll score a goal or provide service, and you're like, wow, man, I can see in him what you guys saw in him to bring him over, but it's kind of the same thing, Kurt, isn't it? We just need a little more consistency. So what's the analysis on the performance of Dom Markzuk so far?
Yeah, I think you actually gave a very good analysis, Spence.
Wow, look at that, soccer guy over here,
himself, He gets in good spots. The quality of his decision making in the final third going forward is I think very good. But the consistency of his execution on that decision making is not always there. I think you can see the types of balls that he plays. I think no one else on the team can actually hit. The ball he played into Jesus for the goal that got called back in Nashville. Mm-hmm. That was a phenomenal pass, right? And he's done that multiple times for us in games and training. We see that all the time. And that quality and that decision making is there. The consistency, like we said for Diego, right? Like that's the piece that needs to be added to the game. And so we need to get him. He needs to find a way to get himself into those high leverage spots more often, so that we can utilize the quality of decision making. But you look at it right now, and competition is good, and we want competition, right? And so Gozos come in and give us some really, really good shifts. And so, credit to him for taking his opportunity. And I think while you're doing well, no one's gonna sit you down, right? So now it's about Dom saying to himself, hey, I want to get back out there, right? And we've seen that with other players. Oscar Tranis had to deal with something similar this year as well. So competition is good, and we're looking to push those guys. But Dom's a guy that has a lot of quality. Obviously, as recently as I think the last international window was in the full national team with Poland. So I think there's a lot of potential and quality there, and we're just helping him get it out.
So, Kurt, you lead MLS in red cards, my guy.
Cool. You're going to get me started on this one.
Well, I mean, look, like I watch all the games, and I think there have been some. Well, one red card was actually rescinded because it was so pathetic, but there are a couple of others. The one that I think it was Piol against Dallas here was beyond dumb. So what's fair to say about just simply that dynamic? I mean, on paper, if people aren't watching and they see that you lead MLS in red cards, it's like, well, are they undisciplined? But if you're watching, you've also been hard done. So when I say to you, Kurt Schmidt, your team leads MLS in red cards, what is your response?
Yeah, I mean, we've got 4 red cards. I think, one of them is, we obviously didn't appeal it. We can see why that's a red card. I don't think it was malicious. I think it was awkward and poorly timed, but went into it recklessly, and okay, no problem. Another one got rescinded. The third was a second yellow for time wasting, and I'm nearly positive the referee forgot that he had just given Bodie a yellow.
Yep.
And then this one, which I'm doing a lot of research on this one to throw some data at the league about what's going on in the situation, because I think you see this type of moment happen multiple times a game and certainly multiple times a weekend across the league with no action taken. And I understand that it's a higher leverage moment and you're looking for a penalty, and that maybe makes the referee think it's worthy of a yellow card. But as you look at the replay multiple times, it's really hard for me to say that he definitely, without a shadow of doubt, was not touched. And I think it's really, I was going to say harsh, but maybe that's not even a strong enough word. Like it's kind of insane to make a game-changing decision, based on that, in my opinion. Like a second yellow for a dive where the video, slow motion replay doesn't even clearly indicate that the guy wasn't touched. And, I think he was touched. He thinks he was touched. And, maybe he could have stayed up or should have stayed up. But sometimes referees, don't give you a foul if you get fouled and you stay up. And so you've got players in these two minds of, well, if I stay up, maybe I get a shot off, but I don't get the foul, and it could be a penalty, and maybe I missed the shot. And he's doing all this calculation in his head at light speed, right, in the moment, and has to make a split second decision. So I'm really disappointed in, I think, some of the refereeing decisions that have gone our way, and that doesn't even take into account the red card that should have been given against Lovitz in Nashville. I think that even apart from Willie's second yellow, I think there were some. I think the yellow card distribution in this game wasn't quite equitable. So. Yeah, I don't know what to tell you. I think there's an element of discipline to that. I don't think that number for us shows a gross, indiscipline epidemic. I think the two, again, I think the last 3 that we've gotten, one was obviously rescinded, and the 2 second yellows, I think were incredibly, incredibly harsh. And so while we can always, and I hope and I want the team and the players to do is to look within and think, well, what could I have done to have prevented this situation from happening to us? So I think there are things that we can do to affect it, and we should take that responsibility. I know those players do, but me looking at it from my seat, I think it's incredibly harsh by the officials in all those situations, and couldn't have been given as is.
So, of course, Willie will miss Wednesday's tilt against Portland. Johnny Russell available for selection against Dallas. So let's move into the space of the 2 new acquisitions, what you've seen in training. And, again, unfortunately, we will not see Willie on Wednesday, but is there a chance we'll see Johnny?
Yeah, if he's on the bench, there's a chance. And I think if Pablo sees the right moment to get him in there and to add some quality and make a difference in the game, he'll do that. I know, obviously, down a man in that situation in Dallas probably wasn't the right moment to debut him into that. So we'll see if the moment presents itself on Wednesday. But I think, Johnny brings obviously a lot of experience to the group, experience not just in the games, but also in training, which, will take time obviously to see within the group in the games, but helps us a ton as well. And, he obviously also makes a lot of good decisions and has a lot of quality on the ball in those right moments. And so if we see time to use those qualities, we will.
All right, last thing, give me a little glimpse into who Portland is. They're having a good year. They're 3rd in the West. They're 6-3-3, 22 goals scored. So they've got something cooking up there. It's your opponent on Wednesday. Tell me about him, Kurt, before I set you loose.
They are a very attacking, oriented team. They obviously last season and returned all these guys, but they scored a lot of goals. They had, I think it was three or four guys in double digits, which was or was above a certain number, and that was the record or first time that happened in the league. So I think they're still that team. They want to play quick. They want to get forward. They've always been a bit of a transition team, and willing to get out on the break. So that's what we might see a little bit of. I think they are going to push forward. They do have a lot of quality in the attack. You mentioned how many goals they scored, but not how many goals they conceded. I think they've also been a little bit susceptible in the back at times. That's hopefully something we can take advantage of. They've given up, 19. They scored 22. They've given up 19. So it's something that we'll try and take advantage of them on that side of the ball as well.
All right, buddy. Good stuff today. Appreciate the time, and best of luck on Wednesday moving forward, okay?
All right. Sounds good.
All right, Kurt Schmidt, Technical Director for Real Salt Lake, stops by today, courtesy of our friends at IFA Country Stores. Any drive to the basket begins with the first step on the court. That's the ultimate power move. IFA Step 1 Crabgrass Preventer and their lawn food is the first choice to give your yard the healthy, thick green look you desire. The neighbors will be green with envy. Shop IFA online at ifa.coop or stop by one of their 18 Utah locations today. All right, I got 1 hour down, 2 hours to go, okay? Not 3. We're not saying goodnight at 6. We're going to say goodnight at 5, and then we're going to bring you ESPN Radio's live coverage of what could be a historic night for our local basketball team. Where will the Utah Jazz draft? But coming up next, we'll do more hoops. Tom Haberstroh will stop by. We got Tony Parks live in studio for a bit as well, so we got a busy Monday show. And it's good to have you with us right here on The Drive with Spence Checketts on ESPN 700, 92 on FM. We are proud to be part of Utah's ESPN radio network. 2 hours away, almost exactly 2 hours away from the NBA Draft Lottery, which we will have live on our radio station. We'll say goodnight at 5 o'clock. We'll throw it over to live coverage of ESPN Radio, taking you through the NBA Draft Lottery. What a day to have Tom Haberstroh on this little radio program. Tom, happy NBA Draft Lottery Monday. How we doing, bud?
Happy Flag Day.
Sorry, say that again. Happy what?
Flag Day.
Flag Day. Okay. Yes. In addition to that, yes, capture the flag. And that's what we're all hoping we can do here in Salt Lake City, Tom. So let's not bury the lead. If the Jazz get one tonight, what does that mean both in the interim and then for the future of this organization?
Well, it'd be the biggest moment in Jazz franchise history since making the NBA Finals. You get a guy like that on your team. That's a building block that 29 other teams would just about trade any of their players for. I mean, there's a short list of maybe 5 players that a GM would not trade their guy for the chance to have Cooper Flag on their team under a rookie scale contract over the next, 7 or so years. It's not just about the talent. It's about the leadership, and it's about the contract that you get this guy. In the new CBA, it's becoming really hard to build super teams. But if you get a guy like Wemby, and if you get a guy like Cooper Flag, there's a window in which their contract is super, super at a discount. You basically get him at 30 cents on the dollar. And so for Flag, who's 18 years old or 19 years old next season, is going to look like a lot older than his age suggests. And I think the Utah Jazz and whichever team lands Cooper Flag would, I think, in year 2 or 3, be a playoff team. And by the end of that 4-year contract, if he's healthy, the rookie scale contract, at the end of it, I think you have a real chance of being a title contender if you make the right moves around him. Victor Wembanyama, of course, is entering his 3rd year in the NBA, and I think you can say that he is the best prospect since LeBron, if not better prospect. But Cooper Flag isn't too far behind, and the Utah Jazz have a really strong leadership in place, owner, GM, coach that obviously we saw last week. Will Hardy was extended for the foreseeable future, and I think when you have Lauri Markkanen and Walker Kessler and Cooper Flag on the same team, you're not that far away from a playoff team. And I think it would be a huge turn of events for a Utah Jazz team that has been really, struggling over the last couple of years to put a really competitive product out on the floor. But the fan base is hungry for it. They've supported the team, and it would be a great story for the NBA if the Jazz got Cooper Flag.
All right, so here's my follow-up today, Tom, because I've talked to, got a lot of buddies out here that love the Jazz, a lot of Jazz fans in our market that miss spring basketball and miss competitive Jazz basketball. And what we're hearing around here, and look, this is not like breaking news, but the Jazz are going to do everything they can to try to get to 1, even if they fall. And that's a very easy thing to say out loud. But to your point, when you have a generational option like Cooper Flag, like let's say Charlotte gets number 1 or Washington or whoever or the Pelicans, do you think there's any chance that if the Jazz don't get 1, and let's say the Jazz fall to 2 or 3 or whatever, is there a chance that another GM would be willing to listen to offers for 1 from the Jazz if the Jazz don't land 1 themselves?
Yeah, I think there is a chance that another GM would be open to offers at number 1. But the problem is that the drop-off from 1 to 2 to 3 is so steep that unless you have the number 2 pick to offer, I just don't see another team even considering trading out of Cooper Flag. Because there is no clear number 3 prospect in this draft, and Dylan Harper is as good as a candidate for number 2 as anybody in this draft class. I just think that if there was a 2-person or a 2-person draft where it was like it's Cooper Flag and Wemby, like either way you're gonna get a generational player, then you would see a team that would be open to trading out at number 1, but not in this one. It would have to be a crazy offer. Of those teams that have a legit shot at being number 2, you're talking Charlotte, you're talking the Washington Wizards. I just don't think that they would have enough of a reason to move off a Cooper Flagg, especially because you don't want to be the GM that trades Cooper Flagg. You know, we remember the Chris Webber draft at number 1, the Anthony Bennett draft. Andrew Wiggins. We've seen Andrew Wiggins be traded on that draft night, or essentially before the season for Kevin Love. And the Cavs made a good trade to trade out of Andrew Wiggins to get Kevin Love and support LeBron James. I just think if you trade out a number 1 with Cooper Flagg, you got to trade him out for an all-star caliber player. And right now, the Jazz could convince maybe the incoming team that Lauri Markkanen is an all-star caliber player. But I just don't think that they would have enough ammo for one of those rebuilding teams to be convinced. I mean, I guess you could put in draft picks, Walker Kessler and Lauri Markkanen to move up into number 1, but that seems like a very steep price. And honestly, it would take something like that in order for another team to seriously consider it, because Cooper Flagg, again, at the top, he's not just checking off all the boxes from a talent and leadership standpoint. It's that you get him under control for the next 7-8 years. And that's huge. So I don't see it happening. A team trading out of Cooper Flagg, barring some crazy trade. I just don't think Utah has it up their sleeve.
Yeah, I don't think so either. I think I've landed in the same spot you are. But I do feel like, based off of what I've been told, they're going to be as aggressive as they possibly can to get up to number 1. But let's say they're unable to get to 1 and they do land at 2. So while I do agree with you that there is a gap between Cooper Flagg and Dylan Harper, the more I watch Dylan Harper, the more I like him. There's a little Cade to him, right? Like there's a little Cade Cunningham to him. I don't love the comp thing. So let's just, for our listeners out this way, tremendously curious about what the Jazz could do and will come away with. If it is 2 and they land on Dylan Harper, what sort of player do you think he is?
Yeah, he's one of these big guards, point guards, combo guy. He's young. He's 19. He's got, alpha mentality written all over him. And the thing I love best about Dylan Harper, who is much more efficient than his co-star Ace Bailey, who I think is a project. Dylan Harper is more of a ready-made prospect. He's big. He's at 6'6", 220. The thing I love about him most is he's a second-gen guy. He's a legacy player, Ron Harper's son. And what we've seen historically in the draft, that if you get guys who are the sons of an NBA player, they vastly outperform their draft slot. Vastly. Even at number 2, we've seen guys come into the league that a son of an NBA player that for whatever reason, whether it's genetic, whether it's IQ, like just institutional IQ, your emotional intelligence, being part of a household that already seen the rigors of the NBA and you're already knowing the rigors of the NBA. There's just been a huge history of second-gen players being much better than we expected in the NBA. And Dylan Harper, although the team wasn't a winning team last season, the Rutgers didn't even make the NCAA tournament despite having 2 of the top 3 prospects in the league, consensus top 3 prospects in the draft class. Dylan Harper's a much better player. A really good offensive player and a solid defensive player. You're not going to build around him defensively, but Dylan Harper being a second generation player, a guy who's, I think, a younger, more established. He's been a top guy for a couple of years now. I think the Utah Jazz would be very happy with Dylan Harper at number 2, especially because I think they've been struggling to find their ball handler, the lead guard, over the last couple of years. Keontae George, Isaiah Collier have been solid at, their best points, especially with the way Collier played at the second half of last season, but he's not taking the place of a Dylan Harper. And Cade Cunningham is, I think, because of his size and the ability to be the lead guard, I think a lot of people look at Dylan Harper as a Cade Cunningham proxy. I think that's a little too aggressive, like you said, but I think he's a really good player that can be an all-star one day.
All right, so let's just kind of keep doing this exercise. And then obviously we need to talk about the fact that Giannis might be open to being traded and what that could look like and what that means. And oh, by the way, the playoffs are going on, so we'll get to that as well. But ultimately, if it is 3, okay, so Cooper's 1, seems like it's a consensus that Dillon would be 2. And then at 3, it does get interesting. I agree with you about Ace. I think there's a lot to like about him, namely his measurables. I mean, he's super long, and there are moments of pretty stunning athleticism, but I don't think he'll be ready to go right out of the gates. Then there's VJ Edgecombe. A lot of people like the Jeremiah Fears kid, the point guard from Oklahoma, Trey Johnson from Texas in the mix. So if it's at 3, Tom, if the Jazz don't get 1 and they can't get Cooper, if they can't make a trade and they're not a 2 for Dillon, who do you think they land on at 3 and why?
Oh, man, I love VJ Edgecombe. I don't know who the Jazz would take at number 3, but if I were the Jazz, I would take VJ. He is just a baller. He's a hooper. He has one of the best steal rates in the draft, 2.3 steals per 36 minutes. And if you're looking at what translates or what projects stardom in the next level at the NBA, believe it or not, it's steal rate. Steal rate has a very high predictive value. If you're able to get a bunch of steals above average at the college level, those guys tend to have the ability to outperform expectations at the next level in ways that we can't really understand. Like there's something about that is just your feel for the game, your IQ, that your activity, your nose for the ball, that if you're an elite defensive guy in the steals column, it translates not just defensively, but offensively too, with athleticism and ability to kind of get into passing lanes and strength. A lot of these projections analytically are very strong for VJ Edgecombe because of that. He's a guy who's a great rebounder. He is not an elite scorer at this point, just scoring 15 points a game for Baylor. But what we're seeing from the rest of his game, playmaking, defensive playmaking, his turnover ratio. These are things that he is doing at a really good level, and I love his athleticism. I just think he's a really good player that you might not be as much of a household name, but I love VJ Edgecombe in this class.
I'm going to ask you about 4 and 5 because the Jazz can't fall lower than 5. So let's say the order that you've outlined is the order that we see, and it's Cooper, it's Dillon, and then it's VJ. Jazz landed 4. Who do you think they look at and why?
Knipple. I love the shooting from him. I've seen him in person. He plays really hard. Doesn't have a great wingspan, but when you're looking at a guy who's shooting almost 50, 40, 90 at the college level and plays hard defensively, he's a guy that I think he is a good wing player for the Utah Jazz to build around, especially the shooting. I really love that. He's got good size at 6'7", but again, he doesn't play a lot bigger than he is. But he had a great season at Duke, and when you look at the ability to shoot the ball, that's something that Utah really loves. They have a great shot profile in terms of getting efficient shots on the floor, but they just haven't been able to convert. So if I got the 4 or 5, I'm hoping that Knipple, the freshman at Duke, falls to them at number 5. I think he's a great shooter, good wing player. Defensively, as long as you've got Walker Kessler back there, he can kind of clean up some of the issues there. Not a point of attack defender like, say, Edgecombe could be. But he's a big guard, can play at the 3 in a pinch, but he's going to be a guy that I think will be a good floor spacer in a league that is trending towards three-point shooting. He is a knockdown shooter, and I think he'd be a great fit for Will Hardy's system.
All right, now let's get to the Giannis stuff. And ultimately, I talked about this to start the show. One of the things that makes this topic interesting in Salt Lake City today is the fact that the lottery is tonight, and after I saw the Shams report that Giannis is willing to potentially look at other fits outside of Milwaukee, I listened to some Sirius XM NBA stuff. I turned on some of the NBA shows just to see what the conversation sounded like, and nobody brought up the Jazz. I heard Brooklyn, and Brooklyn is kind of in a similar spot to where the Utah Jazz find themselves with some decent young talent, but mostly draft capital and a lot of questions to be answered. So how do you think this ends, and is there any way the Jazz get involved? Do you think it makes any sense at all? Giannis has 2 years left on his deal, then a player option. So how do you think it plays out, and do you think the Jazz have a say in any of this?
I think they do because they have 8 tradable first-round picks. 2 of them are in this year's draft. So if you're getting on the phone with John Horst over in Milwaukee, you're going to basically come to that table and say, I've got 8 first-round picks for Giannis Antetokounmpo in my coffers. Let's talk. And OKC obviously is another team that can come in as a threat to that. But when you're talking about OKC, does he fit next to Shai Gilgeous-Alexander and what they're trying to build with OKC? They might be a little gun shy to do something like that. And when you're talking about the ability to get Giannis, is that timetable for Utah Jazz and OKC the right one? And for OKC, they're a super young team. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, similar to Lauri Markkanen, in that you have a star player who's entering his prime. So it makes some sense in that perspective to get Giannis. But for me, OKC has 13 tradable firsts compared to Utah. I mean, that's a crazy stat right there, that they have 13 tradable first-round picks to put into a potential deal for Giannis. But from an organizational standpoint, I wonder if OKC just isn't willing to go all in on Giannis just yet. We have to see what happens here with, the playoffs and how things shake out. But Utah does have that ability to put in those 8 first-round picks, which is a trump card for just about any team outside of OKC. So can they get into the Giannis sweepstakes? Yes. But I would not necessarily consider them a serious contender because I think Giannis would have a say in this. And for Giannis to leave Milwaukee and look around and say, where do I want to go that can give me an opportunity to win a championship? I don't think that the Utah Jazz are in the running for that. It would have to be just a Godfather offer. I'm talking like if they get the number 2 pick here and they put it into the deal along with 8 tradable first-round picks, I think that's the only way you're going to get Giannis Antetokounmpo to play ball and the Milwaukee Bucks front office, because I think Giannis wants to go to a team to win a championship. And I just don't think that if you're trading Walker Kessler and Lauri Markkanen and whoever they get in the first round here, I don't know what is left. And you're risking Giannis just turning around and saying, I want out right away. How am I going to be winning championships here in Utah? I just left Milwaukee where we had Damian Lillard and we didn't get that far. How can we get further than that? Am I closer to winning a second championship in Utah? And so I don't see it unless there's, a secondary deal that Danny Ainge can pull where he's like, I'm going to go get a big time star with, Walker Kessler and Lauri Markkanen and then use the rest of my assets to go all in on Giannis. I just don't see it right now.
Yeah, I don't either. I just, I figured at some point somebody would bring them up as a possibility. In fairness, Bobby Marks wrote a piece where he talked about the Jazz. So a couple minutes left, so let's do some playoffs. Teams actually playing. And tonight, Tommy, is maybe the biggest game that the Knicks have played at MSG since 1999. I'm not even kidding. When you think about what's at stake here, even after going up to TD Garden and grabbing 2, and I still pull for my New York Knicks. I always will. I was very skeptical about them being able to get 2 more. I remain very skeptical about them being able to get 2 more. Remember, I know you know this, but for our listeners, Boston was historically good on the road this year, actually a better road record than at home. I wish I was there tonight. Tonight's one of those nights where you want to be at MSG. How do you think it's going to – what's the scene going to be like, and what do you think goes down with Boston and New York tonight?
Yeah, remember Game 7 last year against the Pacers in the Eastern Conference semis? The Knicks got blown out at MSG.
Yep.
And I think about that, like, man, it's hard to imagine – that happening again, basically getting swept at home in Game 3 and 4 against Boston. But Boston had much better shots there in Game 3, and I think they might have figured out, like, hey, we can't just go ISO every time. We got to get some offense, and the shots are going to fall. They shot 25 of 100 in the first 2 games. Boston did from downtown, and they were awesome in Game 3. and they can't get Mitchell Robinson on the floor because of the hack-a-shack that Boston's doing. And it's just, I think Boston at this point has figured out that, yes, they need to have three-point shooting in their arsenal in order to beat the Knicks, but it can't be A1. The team that has won the fast break battle in this first three games have won the series so far. So the Knicks opened with winning the fast break column in the first two games, and then the Celtics got out in transition a lot more than New York did, and that starts on the defensive end. So as much as I want to say that the Knicks can really make this a series, and of course they're up 2-1, I still think that the Boston Celtics are going to win Game 4 here. But the way that Karl Anthony Towns has played in this series, I do feel like there's a lot more on the table that he can give. Just 1 of 7 from downtown in this series. He has not taken advantage of the reason why they got him in the first place, was providing that spacing in the 5-out system. And unless they're going to get that big Karl Anthony Towns game, I just think that Boston's going to win this Game 4. It's going to be great. I mean, great drama between these two teams. And great competitiveness, but I think Boston was a little unlucky in their three-point shooting the first two games. That looked awful, from aesthetic standpoint, the way that they were just trying to take the first three that they could get. I think they settled down a little bit more in Game 3 and got out in transition and attacked the Knicks in the open court, and I think that's the way they got to win in Game 4 is getting out in transition. Whoever does that. And doesn't have to play against a set defense, that's the team that's going to carry the day in Game 4.
You like dogs, Tom?
Dogs?
Dogs. Do you like dogs?
I'm looking at my German Shepherd right now.
Okay, love it. So here's where I've landed on this. Donovan Mitchell is a golden doodle, and you love golden doodles. Okay, everyone loves a golden doodle. Cute dogs. You can win dog shows with golden doodles. Sometimes golden doodles are going to drop 50 points in a playoff game. But to win the playoffs, you got to have pit bulls. And Indiana has a ton of them. Is there any way Cleveland gets back into this? And look, obviously Donovan has done some really special things. And if you're the Cavs, you're going to say that Garland's not right and we haven't been healthy or whatever it is. But this will be, looks like, Tom, another year where Donovan's going home after the second round. Do you think the Cavs have any chance to get back into this series?
Golden doodles. Oh, do you have a golden doodle?
I have an English cream, but I love a golden doodle. Who doesn't love a golden doodle, right? But you're not putting a golden doodle in a dog fight, is what I'm saying.
I think golden doodles. My wife got bit by a poodle on a run, and it drew blood, and it was awful. And I'm not a fan of poodles.
Okay,
I'll tell you that.
All right.
So a golden doodle is a mix of a poodle and golden retriever, which I'm a big fan. I like Labradors. I like golden retrievers. I'm fine with them. I just don't like the whole doodle thing. So
Gotcha.
I'm out on doodles.
Okay.
All right.
Okay.
So putting that aside, Donovan Mitchell, you can't pit this on him. I know it's Utah and it's your region right there with Donovan Mitchell. I can't put any of what's happening here on Donovan Mitchell. He showed up in this series. He has. I mean, notwithstanding the second half where he missed with an ankle injury, and it looks like he's a game-time decision for Game 5. But I'm looking at Donovan Mitchell, and I'm saying, you showed up. Everybody else hasn't. And because of injuries, you can chalk this up to the 2015 Atlanta Hawks showing up here in this series where it seems like they're shorthanded but also a little overrated. But I'm not putting this on Donovan Mitchell, a guy who in this series, without playing the second half, is averaging 34 points per game and just doing so much for this team that outside of him, Evan Mobley missing in this series, not just literally missing, but hasn't been playing up to himself. And Ty Jerome, who in my opinion was the most improved player in the NBA this year, has been a complete zero. Darius Garland has been in and out of the lineup, hasn't been himself. So for me, I don't want to put this on Donovan Mitchell. I think that's unfair. But in terms of a Donovan Mitchell-led team, yeah, you can say that the Cleveland Cavaliers have underperformed here. I just think that the Indiana Pacers, the way that they play beautiful basketball. The way that they move the ball, the way that they get open shots, and they play with energy, and they play speed, and they play the pace at which they play, is something that the Cavs have completely underestimated. And I think a lot of this is due to the fact that they played a Miami Heat team that just kind of laid down in the first half. And this is, if the Miami Heat, they were terriers. They were not pit bulls. They were not Rottweilers. And the Pacers have incredibly hard-nosed defenders, role players on this team. And they move the ball. They play such a smart brand of basketball. And it reminds me of summertime. I don't know if you remember this, but in 2014, when the San Antonio Spurs beat the Miami Heat, they moved the ball at such a rapid pace. They had 100 more passes per game than the Miami Heat, LeBron James-led Heat, in that 2014 NBA Finals. They destroyed the Heat with their ball movement, and that's what the Indiana Pacers are doing against the Cleveland Cavaliers. It's just they play a different brand of basketball. And with the Cavs, they were a great passing team, not a high-volume passing team, but a great passing team in the regular season. And they just look like a shell of themselves. And a lot of that is Kenny Atkinson just hasn't found the right formula. A lot of it is the mismatches that the Indiana Pacers have been able to exploit on Max Strus and Darius Garland. They've bullied those guys in mismatches and targeted them. But Nesmith, Nembhard, these guys are killers out there. And Tyrese Halliburton hasn't had a great series, and yet they're up 3-1. It really is an incredible testament to players who are not stars, but stars in their roles in the Indiana Pacers role players.
Tom, prediction time. Who gets the number one pick tonight?
I'm going to go with the Utah Jazz.
There we go.
Playing the odds.
There we go.
I'm sorry. Is that jinxing, or is that something you want to hear?
No, it's good karma out here. We need it. It's a big day, man. It's been a rough few years, and we need just some hope for this fan base that's used to a really competitive team. So I'll set you loose. Appreciate the time, and I'll get you back on soon. Thanks, Tom.
You got it, Spence.
Tom Haberstroh, NBA Daily Assist style, on a big day in the world of the National Basketball Association, where apparently Giannis Antetokounmpo is open to being traded from Milwaukee. NBA draft lottery is tonight. We've got Knicks Celtics. Then we got Warriors T-Wolves. Didn't have time to get to that with Tom, but we'll do some with Tony Parks coming up on the other side. Want to tell you about the Daybreak Home and Garden Show. It's right around the corner. It's May 16th through the 18th. It's the ballpark at America First Square, 11111 Ballpark Drive in South Jordan. Website, thebesthomeshow.com. Excuse me, thebesthomeshow.com. So listen up, homeowners. Spring is in the air. The birds are chirping and the flowers are blooming. Is your home and backyard sanctuary ready to enjoy the coming season? Well, go check out the new Daybreak Home and Garden Show. Coming to the ballpark at America First Square, May 16th through the 18th. This new show will have something for every member of the family. Vendors galore, home, garden, and patio. Free games for the kids, free day seminars, and hourly free prizes. Come tour the exciting new tiny home from Box House and tour the new Bees Ballpark. You can get your tickets now. It'll be some of the most exciting, fun, educational home shows ever in Daybreak. Get tickets and info at thebesthomeshow.com, sponsored by our friends at Bullfrog Spas. All right, we're about 90 minutes away from the NBA Draft Lottery, but Tony Parks is going to join us coming up on the other side, live in studio, right here on ESPN 700. What do we got, an hour and 20? Yep, hour 20 minutes before the NBA Draft Lottery takes place tonight. Programming reminder, we will say goodnight early, right at 5 o'clock. Then we'll bring you ESPN Radio's live coverage of the NBA Draft Lottery, so stay tuned for that. And then a fun night of NBA basketball tonight. It's one of the biggest games at Madison Square Garden in a number of years, as the Knicks have an opportunity to put the Celtics on the precipice of elimination, and then we'll see if the Warriors can at least get one while Steph is getting better. So fun night of NBA basketball tonight, but live in studio, friend of the program, friend of mine. Hello, Tony Parks. How are you?
I'm great, man. I'm great.
Great to see you, as always.
Getting on the flight to Sacramento late tonight.
Okay.
Starting a 6-game series there.
Okay.
Just enjoying the baseball world. I love it because I get home and I get to catch, like, the last half of the late game.
Uh-huh.
The NBA playoffs, man. This round, you and I have always talked about this. I always told you I love this round maybe more than any. Just because there's 2 games a night.
Yep.
Chances are really good. One of them is going to be awesome. It feels like every night both of them are awesome.
For
Just
sure.
feels that way.
Yeah,
wow.
it's like March Madness is a primer for spring basketball because the NCAA tournament is unbelievably entertaining.
Yeah.
And then you just want the NBA to, have their employees show up for work and want to try hard, which we just don't get enough in the regular season. But when you see it, you realize what it looks like when the best players in the world give a rip about playing basketball. It's so fun.
Oh, the late game situations, the intense defense. I mean, the big defensive stops in the Knicks Celtics series and those late games. That's what made, not to pull the back in my day, but what made 90s basketball so great is we just remember a lot of the playoffs. But there were great regular season games too, but it was the big defensive plays that you never forgot, as well as the big shots that were hit and things like that. It was exciting. So this whole round, man, it's had me connected, engaged, and fired up. And because during the regular season, I had so much going on, I didn't get a chance to really watch a ton of it.
Sure.
But, man, I've been glued to every bit of this.
So before we get to what could be a historic night for the Jazz and your thoughts on what they could grab if it's won, obviously Cooper Flagg, what that could mean for our market. Give us an update on the Bees. And here's actually what I wanted to ask you when I saw you on the rundown today. Now that you've been doing this job for a while, after we lost Steve, rest in peace, Steve Klauke, any of it surprising to you? I know you filled in a bunch, but now that you've been the full-time guy for a while, has it been what you expected? Has it been better? Has it been harder? Just your thoughts on it.
Been everything I would expect in terms of the baseball stuff. I mean, there's just no doubt, man. The enjoying calling a baseball game every day, waking up every day. People ask, how do you do so many games? And I'm like, it's awesome, man. I love it. There's a game tomorrow. After that, there's a game after that. I love that each game, it's like, by no means do I think I'm the Bob Ross of broadcasters, but each game, it's like I got this canvas.
Sure.
And some of it I get to paint, but the players in the game paint most of it. I just get to be a piece of that. I get to be a piece of the journey for every single player on their way to the major leagues. I've had interactions with 3 or 4 players right after they got informed they're headed up.
And that's the good stuff.
I can't tell you what that moment's
stuff.
like, man.
Yeah.
It's like you see them at 8, 9, 10 years old, all at the same time in this one moment. Because many times they've talked to me before they get to call their parents. It's like,
yeah,
wow.
You're right there.
I mean, it's the freshest thing to it. Yeah, so I remember Gustavo Campero jumped into my arms and was like, I'm going to the big leagues. He was
cool.
so fired up.
Yeah,
so all of that has been everything I could have ever imagined and more. I got to tell you, there's nothing like it. And, for me, before I was ever hired for the job, it was personal. I mean, it was very personal. Being there as the MC of the Bees and behind the scenes, there was a cultural expectation to be something where you just ultimately strive to be the very, very best that you can, and even then some. It's an endless pursuit. It's what it was for Steve. That's what it is for me. But also to help my teammates be that too. And Steve carried that standard. The strange thing has been, no doubt, and I don't blame anybody for this, because the timelines were so close with Steve retiring, Steve, me then being the full-time voice, and then Steve tragically passing away, there's usually a mix-up of people forgetting because they believe I took over after he passed away.
Oh, yeah.
And it just happens.
Right,
you can't blame people. It's just so close. Wait, now, So what? Take me through the experience when he passed away, and then you took over. It's like, and I've been in live interviews where I've had to say, "Well, no, he retired," and you can see them on the air realizing, like, "Oh, okay, I didn't know that."
Yeah.
So that's just a small thing, or somebody will be like, "Yeah, I loved your broadcast, so I hope they make that a permanent thing."
Like it is a permanent thing. We've been doing it for a while now.
Filling in these shoes,
Yeah.
and it's like, no. Steve had his shoes. And no one will ever be those shoes. And I have my own pair of shoes, and Steve would want it that way.
Sure.
So it's kind of unique in that way. Now that's another part of the tragedy. I've been in great touch with his daughter Lisa, and his wife Sue, and Adam and I stay in touch, but we're very unique on when our busy seasons are.
Sure. Yeah.
So anyway, it's been beautiful to have that connection with Steve's family. The opening night there at the ballpark, I'm walking around, just to kind of get the vibe. And I saw them, and all three of us were like so emotional to see each other on that night. So anyway, it's been everything I could dream of.
Yeah, look, it was an unspeakable tragedy no matter what, but the fact that he had retired and was ready to kind of go do the thing and live the rest of his life, like it almost stings even more, even though it just stings horribly no matter what. People do forget that Steve had retired. He was ready to go live the rest of his golden years with his family.
And he had all this panic. Every time I'd see him at the ballpark, he was like so proud of me. He loved listening to my games.
That's cool.
You know what I mean? And
he was that type of guy.
Yeah, and he loved giving me all this feedback, mostly positive. People were like, was he giving you feedback? Yeah, and most of it was positive. He loved the way I set things up and called this play here. And he liked that he and I were different, by the way. He liked that he and I were different in the way we called the game. The most important areas, I think, were similar, but in the ultimate art, we were different, and he liked that. And then he was out on a walk. That's what he was doing.
Yeah.
And what's crazy is when I was informed of what happened, I had the girls with me on a trip to Vegas. They flew in, I flew in. We all got to the airport together. We stayed up super late because the adrenaline was high, and we as a family. The reason why they were there with me at that time is earlier in the year, I picked his brain on a lot of stuff. I said, if you could go back and do one thing over more often or just different, he said, I would have had the family travel with me even more. He said, I did it, but I would have done it even more.
Yeah.
So I was like, heck with it. Let's just do as much as we can when we can.
For sure.
So I had him on that trip, and they were in the room when the announcement was made on a Zoom call.
Yeah, that's tough. So no easy way to exit that space. So non sequitur a bit, but how's the team? Give us a little overview, and how's the new ballpark? How's the experience been?
The new ballpark's beautiful, man. I mean, that twilight hour, like you never know till you get an experience of it.
Sure.
But sitting up there, every time we hit a twilight hour where the sun, where the natural lighting and the stadium lights are doing the same amount of work to keep the field, lit up, and then you look out and around, whoa, man, is it beautiful. And you got the scene of the mountains, and you've got just that overall look beyond, and it'll look even better after everything gets completed. But still, like, that's a really cool moment
for sure.
At the ballpark, man. So it's beautiful to see that. Fans, when they come, they talk about, how great the experience is. It's been really neat. The Bees have had a number of guys getting calls up. They get called up. It's one thing that we see. We see dudes playing really well.
Yep.
See you later. That's how it works.
It sure does.
And so it's been cool. Like, the rotation really solidified themselves on some of those road trips. They won a series. They look good. All these quality starts. Next thing you know, you have 3 bullpen games in a series. That's the name of the game.
It is. So it's the ecosystem.
So it's been fun to watch a lot of the individual success combined with some of the team success when it's happening. And so it's been fun to be around.
Good. And good crowds. We're getting some good crowds out there.
Yeah,
Excellent.
Saturday night. You have a great fever pitch when the team was up and then they were down and then the game kind of bled out. But the energy and the pageantry of the crowd was top shelf on Saturday night.
Great to hear. So I wanted to ask you this today, and in our next segment, we'll do some jazz, we'll do some lottery, we'll get back to some of that stuff because the lottery is on this radio station in 1 hour and 10 minutes from right now. But there was some news not too long ago that became official, and you referenced the Bees culture of everybody starring in their role. You didn't use that term, but whatever you do, let's go ahead and do whatever we can to make sure that we're on the right seat, on the bus, and we're moving forward, and we're trying to work hard to be great. How much of that culture would you attribute to the Millers owning the club because they now own our soccer team? They now own Real Salt Lake.
Yep.
And so, obviously, with my background, I have a ton of friends at RSL, and I worked with you for the Millers for 7 years. So I have this unique paradigm where I know the club, I know RSL, I know the culture that we wanted to set back in 2004. And then when I left RSL for the Jazz in 2011, spent 7 years working for the Millers. So I've talked to a lot of people over there because I have the experience that they're now just starting. And I had a great experience working for the Millers for 7 years. And I do think they were excellent stewards of the Jazz, and I think they'll be excellent stewards for our soccer team. But as somebody that's worked for them for a number of years, what would you say to our friends at RSL that now have the new ownership group?
They are magnificent at the cultural expectation of striving for excellence, of truly understanding like how high the bar can be set. The other thing, I think they do a wonderful job of creating synergy among those who are working together. I mean, Trey Fitzgerald and I had a chance to sit down for breakfast, and we were talking
sorry about that.
Oh, I know. We're 5, 6, and under club. Sorry, folks.
I wasn't going there, Tony. I wasn't going there.
I beat you to it. No, it was funny. We sat there. We had our kids' menu in front of us, and we were talking it out. No, but one thing I really like about Trey, I think he's such a great fit. John Kimball, who I've always enjoyed being around. Like, there's some people there that I'm going, okay, they understand the critical piece of how to, what am I thinking? You don't stay in your lane, but not playing out of position.
Mm-hmm.
Like baseball, I use these examples all the time. Like, you're a second baseman. You might have to come all the way across the field to be an extra cutoff on a throw, right? Or third base. There's different situations where you don't stay in your lane, but you also know how to not play out of position. And they're really, really good. And I think at the ballpark, with a lot of the folks that I have a chance to work with on the broadcast side, from the production to the comms department, I think Nate Thompson's doing a stellar job. He came over from the Dodgers organization. I mean, he just jumps right in. He gets it, man. Like, yeah. And there's ways to do a wonderful job of, knowing how to be a backup here, knowing how to create support here, knowing how to do your job to make life easier on marketing, PR, CR, everyone all across the board. And I think that many people there at Real Salt Lake are about to experience why that becomes such a key part of the fabric to the success of an entire team working together.
It sounds so simplistic, but it's so nice to have coworkers who just get it.
Oh,
it sounds like the most simple thing you can possibly say. Because,
right.
Yeah, of course, you should just get it. But there's a big gap between people that just get it and people that just don't and never will.
So you could have helped here. You saw the problem. If you had moved 2 millimeters over here, it would have affected you 0% and would have helped them 70%. And you decided voluntarily not to assist. Okay.
Yep.
And then
you just told on yourself.
Yeah, I mean,
okay?
I just, just to walk through it.
Yeah.
Like, that's
and we
fine.
all know what the facts
and
are.
you're right. That isn't your job. And that's not, you're totally right.
Right.
But, okay.
Yeah.
All right.
All right. Before we catch a break, let me ask you this question. Then we'll do some lottery stuff. Talk Cooper Flag, talk Dylan Harper, Giannis. As you watch the playoffs, and look, I want to be clear because there are very few media members that have the knowledge I have about what happened behind the scenes with Mitchell and Gobert and Quinn. So I know the deal. Okay, yeah. I know why it all went down. Okay, if you want to look to one person as to who really broke this thing down, it was Donovan. It just was. No matter how many podcasts he goes on to say we had more meat on that bone in Utah, I'm not sure why we pulled the ripcord. It's like, dude, come on. We all know exactly what happened, and we know the deal. But I would hear people say after Nico Harrison traded Luka, I would hear people say, well, no team ever trades a 25-year-old superstar. I'm like, well, and I'm not saying Donovan's Luka. Okay, I'm not. But Danny made a calculated decision to trade a 25-year-old dynamic offensive force, and the Cavs are screwed. But Donovan has been really special and, again, is about to go home, I think, after the second round, so he won't get to a conference final. And then we see Gobert with a historic 2020 game to close out the Lakers, like a game that Wilt had, and that's it. It's like plus 25 points, plus 20 boards, 80% field goal. That's rarefied air. You see Mike Conley hitting big shots. You see Nickeil Alexander-Walker playing a massively important role for Minnesota. As somebody who was with the organization during the Gobert, Mitchell, Quinn, Dennis Lindsey iteration of the Utah Jazz, is there any part of you watching these former Jazz players really ball out and wonder, like, was that the right play? Was that the right call?
So to me, it's never about what they go on to do. It's about what you go on to do.
Mm-hmm.
When you leave a relationship, when you leave a job, whatever you do, it can't be, well, I don't want to leave this because I'm afraid that they might go on to have success and how that looks on me and how that cannot be the reason why you do it.
Mm-hmm.
The Luka move may have been the absolute right move. I don't know under the hood what goes on with Dallas. Should you have been able to get a lot more for that? Yes. That was the failure. So if you're going to make the move, like Greg Popovich, who, anybody can feel how they want about him, he didn't make the move with Rodman and then be afraid that the Bulls might win 3 titles.
Mm-hmm.
Because if that was the case, then you stay in a toxic situation that you don't think is going to work. For what?
Right.
So he doesn't go win? So now both of you lose? So Rodman goes on to win 3 championships with the Bulls, and Greg Popovich has got egg on his face, and he pretty much fires himself, not fires himself, but he puts himself the coach to say, okay, now I'm going to see if I can walk the walk with this thing. I'm going to put my name on it. When he goes and wins 5 titles, the point was the payoff for you. So anytime you make a move like that, the focus needs to be on one particular thing. The payoff for you. And many times that's long term. Now, I'm not saying everybody has to agree with every move after the trades with Donovan and Rudy and all that, but I got news for you. If you stay with that in any variation, any shape or form, because nobody was without some sort of fault in all of that, then, like, in my opinion, you're hanging on to something that I think would not have given you the ultimate result that you wanted.
Mm-hmm.
You wanted the ultimate result. You moved on from them. So you made the right change. Now the question is, do you make all the right moves after to get you the ultimate dream? That's where it's on them now. And Danny said, I'm going to bet on me that I have the ability, skill, and the talent with my job, if you will, to eventually go achieve that. Now it's on him to do it.
Mm-hmm.
But let's say he doesn't. Let's say Danny doesn't go on to do it. I do this with Bears fans all the time with Lovie Smith.
Mm-hmm.
They never should have fired Lovie Smith. No, right fire, wrong hires all the way out.
Sure.
So right move to move on from that era. Was it the right choices going forward? That's on you now.
Yep, and to your point, it's very much an incomplete, and I'm not ready to anoint or dismiss because there's so many options they have at their disposal. I do think, before we catch a break, Tony, and you tell me if you agree, I think it's only fair to say so far the results have been very mixed.
I mean,
the picks they've had, the young players they've landed on, their direction. I don't know, man. I just think it's so counter to an athlete to be told, like, we are unserious about winning, even if it's the wrong thing. I don't know. I think it's tough.
I think anyway, the one thing I'll say, and I know we got to get to it's a longer thing. I thought they'd be farther down. I thought they'd be closer, or I'm not saying to a championship. I thought there'd be more progress at this point than what we've seen.
Yeah, no, I think that's fair. All right, Tony Parks live in studio, T-minus 1 hour and 3 minutes before the NBA draft lottery, live here on the station. So keep that in mind if you're not going to be home by 5. If you're driving around town and you're curious to see where the Jazz will draft, make sure to keep it locked right here. Tony stops by today, courtesy of our friends at Cortland Roofing, re-roofing and roof repair experts with over 20 years of experience. Family-owned and operated. Call Cortland Roofing today to get a free rain gutter with any roof replacement. You literally save thousands and thousands of dollars. So give them a call at 801-615-5560. That's 801-615-5560, 801-615-5560, or check them out online at cortlandroofing.com. 2 hours down, 1 hour to go. One more big segment with Tony coming up on the other side right here. On the Drive with Spence Checketts on ESPN 700, 92.1 FM. We are proud to be part of Utah's ESPN radio network. In 55 minutes on the dot, you will find out where the Utah Jazz are going to draft. Coming up this year, June 25th, don't forget, we're going to have great draft night coverage. It will be myself, Gordy Chase, and Richard Smith. We may be out and about on location. If you guys looking for a place to watch the first round of the draft, after our show here in the afternoon, we're going to head out and then do a live show for the entire first round of the draft with Gordy and Smitty, a wealth of basketball knowledge. Tony Parks is live in studio for another big segment. All right, TP, tonight has a chance to be, and I'm not being hyperbolic, as big as any moment that the Utah Jazz have ever had, as big as any moment this team has ever had. We know the deal. The Jazz have had, I think this is their 10th lottery appearance. They've never moved up.
Yeah.
They've only moved up via trade. They traded up for D. Will, a couple of other options at their disposal throughout the years where they've elected to move up, but they've never had the ping pong balls bounce their way like we're all hoping that it will tonight. So should the Jazz get number one, Tony, what does that do for both the immediate future and long-term future of the Utah Jazz?
It, number one, within its fan base creates a fever pitch of energy that instead of this tear down, it's the first step to moving up as an organization. What I found amazing in the Quinn Snyder era was that 2015 season, the first season of Snyder, towards the end of the year, the energy that was there with the team, because they were winning now, they had an identity, you had all that. You and I had a conversation last time we were on the air. It's like, what's the culture of the Jazz? What's the identity? When we say Jazz DNA, what does that mean anymore? I mean, I would love somebody to identify it. It's not identifiable. You don't.
I don't think they know. I think they're still learning about it. Yeah.
And that's why I loved the extension for Will Hardy, because I thought, man, it's not just unfair to this guy to have to slog through this and then maybe not have the job when the fruits of the labor come around. I think he's proven that Duke can coach. I've seen it behind the scenes with the work there with the G League and the Stars and all that. Like, no, they have a great system and a great culture within what they do. In order to win in the NBA, sometimes teams lose and get bad before they become great someday. This would be great because now you get the number one pick. Let's say it's Cooper Flagg. Now you know it's not, well, let's go bottom out some more. No, it's let's start to move in positive directions, because I don't think you would want to get Cooper Flagg and say, now listen, we're going to have some really bad habits on purpose here for a little while, but we need you to be the flag bearer around here. No, now you got to start, move in the positive direction. And I think that would be great, because I think Jazz fans have been waiting for that, and I think they'd be excited to see that happen. So that to me would be great, because now there's a sign of good news, something they haven't really had. Because the moment you have good news, a bunch of trades, midseason, bottom out, holy cow.
Cooper Flagg. So the NBA Draft Combine, it was revealed that Cooper Flagg grew an inch last year at Duke.
Okay.
Now, here's why I bring it up, and I underscore this all the time. He turned 18 in December. Like, this kid should have been a senior in high school.
Mm-hmm.
He reclassified and then entered college because he was ready to play, obviously, at the highest of levels. Like, part of me thought Richie Saunders was going to leave BYU because he's 23. And if you have an opportunity to be drafted, what you really want to do is get to your second contract, third contract. I mean, hell, if you're Chris Paul, get to your fifth, because that's when the generational wealth kicks in. To your point, earlier about Cooper Flagg. So he is still so young, but it feels like he has an opportunity to be a difference maker right away. We're hearing from a couple of different people. Shams was actually on TV not too long ago, and there's a clip going around where he is reporting that if the Jazz don't get one, they're going to be as aggressive as they can to trade up and get number one. What do you think that looks like? So let's say the Jazz, and by the way, I do like Dylan Harper. The more I watch Dylan Harper, there's a little Cade Cunningham there. Like, that's a big guard that you need. And I'll remind Jazz fans, I talk about this all the time, if you want to know what type of players Danny Ainge wants on his team, watch the Boston Celtics tonight. And Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum are the perfect archetype for what you need in the NBA. 6'8", 6'7", 6'8", big body guys, long, can guard multiple positions, do a myriad of different things. Dylan can do that. But if the Jazz fall and they don't get number one, but they want to move up. First of all, you have to have a willing trade partner. I'm not sure a GM wants to be the guy that trades Cooper Flagg. Do you throw 5 or 6 picks to the team that has one? Do you offer Lowry? Do you offer Walker? Like, if the Jazz want to move up to one, what do you think it looks like?
Well, I mean, if you want to move up to one, first of all, it depends on where you're at. And second of all, the team that's holding that number one knows what your bank account looks like in terms of assets, right? So they can get incredibly aggressive. And that trade, in my opinion, would not be finalized until the day of the draft.
Draft day, for sure.
Yeah. It would be like
this
an
isn't
hour
happening
before
tonight.
this starts.
Yeah, this isn't happening
so
tonight.
The constant conversation is should they? Well, I think the other one there with Harper, back to your point on that, great combo guard, exactly what you're talking about. So if they get 2, I could very well see Danny Ainge saying, look, I still get a lot of what I want, and I'll take whichever one you don't, and I'll hang on to all these assets because I need more than just one really great player to turn this thing around. So I'm not going to break the bank for one guy going forward with this. Because if you look at it, with the 4 years and not a lot happening in the process that he had there with Boston, then eventually you get those key number 3 picks that blossomed, and eventually this whole entire thing turned into a 12-year process, which landed to a championship. So with that being said, I could very much see them staying at 2. But let's say something tragic happens, you're 3, you're 4, they want to get up, they want to spend. I think that they would explore with a particular budget what it takes to get there. But this is where Danny, so you did the first part to get all these assets. You did the first part to go through the pain tolerance. Now you have to become really good at this next phase, which he's been able to show that he can, to get the right guy and to spend and do what it takes to get that guy. So, he's going to explore all of it. What does it look like? If I'm the number one team, I'm like, well, I want this, that. And then if you're the number one team, you got to get serious about, okay, well, what would I be willing to settle for? That's what makes this game fun.
Yeah, and to your point about not being one great player away, dude, they're 3 or 4 great players away. Like when Oklahoma City, I think the final home game for the Jazz this year was OKC. And so I just made it a point, like, just get down there. It's the final home game. Go say hello to some people. Go final Jazz home game. I think I went to 10 this year. And you and I, once upon a time, were at that building way too much. And so whenever I think about, do I want to go to the game? I don't know. I feel like I've been to enough games. But I went down to watch OKC. Scott Layden was in town.
Yeah.
And so I was able to sit with Scott and Smitty, and we watched OKC. Tony, they've got 12 guys that can play at a high level. So I'm watching OKC in Denver, and you know this, like if you're a sports talk radio host in Salt Lake City, you've got to bring it back around to the local stuff at times. So I always watch through the prism, like, what does this mean for the Jazz? I'm analyzing the Jazz against these teams. And yes, I'm analyzing them against the best team in the West and one of the top 2 or 3 teams in the league, but that's how I do this job. I want to hold our local teams to high standards. And when I watch, it's not just the top-end guys. It's not just Shea and Jalen and Chet. They've got 11, 12 high-quality rotational pieces that Mark Dagnall can go to at all times. So when you analyze the Jazz next to a team like that, they're a marathon away from throwing punches with OKC consistently.
Oh, absolutely. And on top of that, too, that's why I say if they were to land at 2, not the biggest tragedy. You hope they get 1. But 2 is also a great spot. You get a terrific player. And this process is, a much longer road than people would want it to be. Because next year now, you may have a ton of the losing, but at least you're building towards quality culture, a young player to build around, and then also looking to the forward to now get more like-minded players, more like-bodied players, if you will, like the type of player Danny Ainge is looking for. So, yes, they're more than just one guy away. That's why if they were, say, 2, and they move up to 1, I would want them spending very little to make that happen. But if a tragedy happens and you drop to something like, you drop to 3 or so, that would shock me a little bit. I would be disappointed to see that happen.
I'll tell you what, it feels like your point about, and we'll just operate off a hypothetical, okay? And there's no way of knowing if this is going to happen. We'll know in about 45 minutes. But let's operate off the hypothetical that Lady Luck shines on the Jazz tonight for the first time. Number 1 belongs to the Utah Jazz. Cooper Flagg is the pick. I just feel like part of the frustration, and look, we're all in our own echo chamber, right? We all have our own cognitive dissonance. I talk to my friends that are Jazz fans, and I interact with Jazz fans who, ask me questions online or whatever. So I'm not saying that I'm here to speak for the entire fan base. But I think one of the pieces of frustration over the past few years is what I perceive to be a very clunky rebuild. And yes, they tried to send some propaganda message through some media like, hey, well, it's not a rebuild. It was a teardown. And now we're ready to rebuild. I'm like, dude, that's not how that works. But thank you anyway. So it's been clunky. They started out, and they were better in Will's first year than I think they anticipated.
Oh, yeah.
They wait until February to break it down, which is too late. And they do the same thing the next year. Mm-hmm. And look, I'm sorry, because I would talk to some people with the Jazz, and they would say to me, like, well, we thought we were tanking, but our coach is too good. And I said, who coaches the Spurs? What are you talking about? Like, I perceive it to be a clunky process through 3 years. But I think as a fan base, all you want is best foot forward and something to latch onto.
Yeah.
And up until this point, I think Lowry was really special year one, but he was also playing with some grown-ups like Mike Conley and Kelly Olynyk and vets, guys that know how to win. And ever since those players were jettisoned, Lowry's been playing with kids who don't know how to win. And so what does Lowry Markkanen look like when this team is good again? I think there's a lot to like about Walker, but it's a group of players that really I think there are a lot of questions about. And so if you can land Cooper Flagg, even if next year is more pain tolerance to the fan base, that at least gives them something to say, okay, we got something here.
Yes.
And we can be patient because we have something here. But up until this point, there just hasn't been a lot to latch onto.
Well, the weirdest thing about the early part of it is I kept saying, do it or don't.
Right.
Like, do it or don't.
Yep.
Well, now you're better than you thought you were going to be. Like you said, it was late that they flushed it out and then bottomed out and tried to kind of sort of do it. And I thought, all right, well, I can't tell if that's what you were trying to do to begin with or not. At least this past year, they were finally like, oh, yeah, we're going for the number one pick.
Right.
You can clearly see it there. Now there was clarity. Going forward, you get the number one pick. Let's say it's Cooper Flagg, whatever it is. It can't be Cooper Flagg and culture is still kind of not really understood. No, I want accountability for bad defensive principles.
Historically bad defensive principles, by the way.
I don't want
for 2 straight years.
Bad defensive principles, but I don't really know what to do about it. No. And for Will, in that sake, to have that much going forward with the years on his contract, now I think I'm excited for him to be able to have that. Like, I don't care. I won't play you, and I'll play somebody who, like Quinn Snyder was to the point where it was like, yeah, I'll play this Rudy Gobert guy instead of you, Enes Kanter. Mm-hmm. I know you were the third pick. And I know that Rudy Gobert's got to stop offensive goaltending. We'll get to it. We'll get there. But the big thing was there was accountability. So when the Jazz lost 9 games in a row, I'm in that locker room in December, and I'm looking at confidence coming from guys like Gordon Hayward at the time. And I by no means, I know that group wasn't going to hoist up the Larry O'Brien. But here's what was happening. And I kept talking with you during postgame shows going, there is now clarity. There is direction. There is forward understanding and expectation of culture now. I don't see that the last 3 years with the Jazz. So going forward, it can't be, well, there's Cooper Flagg and we're still bottoming. No, you're not. I don't care if it's the equivalent of Jack Cooley playing for somebody else. I don't care if you've got some G League hopeful that steps in, but when there's a standard of accountability, that has to be there now. That has to be there now. So because Cooper, I think, let's say it's Cooper or Dylan, whatever it is, they need to be developed in that environment and no other environment. And whatever that costs you in the immediate future, fine. But that's going to pay off later. And if that lands you another number 1 or number 2 pick, okay. And if that lands you 40 wins and you're kind of in the middle, you've got all these picks and assets going forward to make with the abilities to get what you need. And by the way, I believe they've had the right coach. I'm not just saying it. I believe they've had the right coach who was overachieved with a team that was not supposed to do what it did. And I think now once you get some dudes who are in the right mindset, culture, and what he wants to build, combined with top-level talent, now you're going to start to see special stuff.
Yeah,
but there needs to be alignment. Sorry, there must be clarity and alignment going forward on accountability and cultural expectation.
So just so the listeners are kind of tapped into what tonight could entail, so it's the Jazz, the Wizards, and the Hornets all have a 14% chance of landing the number 1 pick. The Pelicans have a 12.5% chance. Philly actually has a 10.5% chance. This is the second year in a row the Wizards have the highest odds to land the number 1 pick. Atlanta had a 3.5% chance of moving to 1 last year, which they did, and drafted Zachary Richachet, who looked okay. Last year was not the year to have the number 1 overall pick. The last time with the team with the worst record in the league to have the number 1 pick, 2018, the Phoenix Suns. Ever since the lottery odds were flattened in 2019, the worst team has not had the number 1 overall pick. The Jazz are one of 6 franchises that have never landed the number 1 overall pick. So we'll see. I mean, this is a lottery. And to your point, Tony, I feel confident saying, like, I think Justin Zanuck is dynamite at his job.
Mm-hmm.
And as I've said a million times, Danny Ainge doesn't need me to stand up for him. The proof is what Danny has done in his career, quite frankly, at every level. Like, when you consider what Danny has done in the NBA ecosystem, championship player, high-level coach, great broadcaster. People forget Danny was awesome on TV, and now a roster constructor that he did in Boston for basically 20 years. The list of guys in league history that have the resume Danny Ainge has, it might be 3.
Mm-hmm.
It's Danny, it's Jerry West, and it's Pat Riley. That might be the list, man. So, like, you've got Zanuck, you've got Ainge, you've got an ownership group that has shown that they're willing to write checks when the team is good. Ryan went into the luxury tax, which I'll give him a lot of credit for. And I do agree with you that I think Will can really coach. Here's where I'll push back. So, postseason media this year, it was Zanuck and it was Will. And to your point about the underwhelming defensive performance, historically bad for 2 straight years. So if you're going to tell me that you love the talent in your locker room, you got to tell me why the defense has been this pathetic. And you've got to I think it's a talent issue, right? So when I hear Zanuck and Will, postseason media say, man, we got a ton of talent in this locker room, my initial reaction is, no, you don't. Liar, right? But if you believe that, then what does that say about the schematics and the concepts and coaching? Because, look, I still watch every Jazz game. Like I said, I went to a grip this year. I saw a lot of lazy defensive efforts. I saw a lot of players out of place. I saw a lot of players just not looking like they were comfortable with any sort of defensive concept or principle.
Mm-hmm.
So is it a talent thing or is it a coaching thing? I think only time will tell. I think it's a talent thing.
Oh, it's a talent thing. I'm sorry, but I watched that defense. I had a game against the Memphis Grizzlies, and I went and sat there, and I thought the first half effort was pretty good. I mean, it was a pretty good game. That third quarter, the defense wasn't worth a food stamp. Mm-hmm. I mean, it was absolutely atrocious. And you could see that it was okay for the defense to be that bad, because when it got bad, it got worse. And then when it got worse, they let go of the rope. And there was a feel about that group that this was not a one-time thing. And I'd watched them enough to know that too. And I sat there and I thought, man, I've been in this arena. That was the first Jazz game I've been to in years. And was living in Chicago during off seasons, and we were coming back because the Bees season was about to get started. And it had been a little while since I had been in the arena. And I remember sitting there, had a nice seat to the game. You ever remember that scene in the movie? This is the most random movie poll ever. My wife watches every movie, and so I'll go to the theaters. And Age of Adeline. You ever seen that movie?
Haven't, no.
Anyway, Blake Lively.
Love me some Blake Lively.
Yeah, Blake Lively's a main character in this movie, and she's on this date where this guy's making dinner for her. And he said, how's the food or whatever? And she was like, oh, wonderful. The opposite of this music. And he goes, you don't like jazz? And she goes, no, I like jazz. This is something different. And that's the way I felt sitting there. I'm just being straight honest here, man. I'm not trying to be harsh, but this was the most different thing. The feel in the arena, every ounce of it. And I remember thinking, man, I can't wait until we get this thing back someday to be what this community expects. And I'm not saying the approach to trade those guys and bottom out and build. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying, man, I have never felt like this sitting in this arena. And you and I were a part of a Jamal Tinsley team.
Gastric distress every time we went home to Brooklyn.
We were just like, we're just looking around. But there were bad teams, but you're like, okay, but you can see where they want to go. I sat there in that arena thinking, man, I think this coach can coach. There's a lot that I like, but whoa, was that bad.
You know, it's interesting you bring that up, because here's what I've been, and maybe you've heard me say this, and maybe we've talked about it, because the fact of the matter is, Jazz fans are awesome. They do show up.
Yeah.
And every time I've been in that building throughout this entire process, more often than not, the crowd. So I guess the way I'll put it is, the crowd is present. People are in their seats.
Yeah.
People show up, but it does not feel like if you were in the building when that Donovan, Ricky Rubio, Joe Ingles, when they beat OKC. What was that, 2018, 2019? That's the first time that I had heard it like that in a while, but it felt like that during the peak Booze Darren years. The 90s obviously were insane. I was a PR intern in 97, 98 for Dave Allred, so I was in the building. So, yes, the crowd is there, but it doesn't sound or feel the way it does when, like, peak Jazz are playing big games in the spring.
Doesn't feel
This is a unique fan situation when the Jazz are really good. And when it's in the spring and it's playoffs and they're winning playoff games at home, I'll put that building up with any building in America with the noise level, you know?
It was not one, just the energy, that deep roar with the defense
You can
chant.
feel it, you know?
Yeah, every deflection, the way that the crowd will rise. I mean, the Favors hits the jumper to put them up 5 that night because you could feel the tension with the lead going away. And, and maybe Donovan might be injured, or no, Rubio with the hamstring, and you're going, oh, my gosh. And Favors hits the J to put him up 5, and the electric reaction to that bucket going in. I don't know, man. Stuff like that. The only thing that saved that night when I was there was Devin Hester came out to throw out T-shirts, and the most random.
Good pull.
And it was right
that.
in front of us, and my wife went absolutely. Daughter wearing a Chicago Girls shirt, and I mean. That my wife was like, yeah, this is nice, and she went from 0 to 100 with fever pitch excitement.
Yeah,
but like that was the only thing to save the night because the first half was great. And I'm thinking we got a good game. Let's go watch this great, entertaining NBA game. And the next half was vomit, and it wasn't the exception; it was the rule, and you could feel it. And to that point, the feeling in the arena was, yeah, it's kind of how it goes. Yeah, it's kind of how it is. It wasn't, oh, there's a talent gap, but there's this, and that. Oh, no, it's just there's a talent gap, and it's kind of no direction either. And I had never felt that in that arena, and I never knew what that felt like. Yeah. You as a Knicks fan probably felt
unfortunately. Tonight might be the biggest game the Knicks have played at MSG since 1999.
That's fair.
They had a game 7 last year against Indiana in the second round, but they got their doors blown off by the Pacers. But that OKC Jazz series, it had so many like shocking subplots where Rubio just outplayed Russell Westbrook and Joe Ingles shut Paul George's water off, dude. And nobody saw that coming, right? That was like the Joe Ingles introduction into like the NBA ecosystem nationally because Paul George could not do anything on Ingles, which was wild, right? I don't know, man.
Well, and you felt like your coach in Quinn Snyder was the difference maker. Like all of a sudden, you shouldn't be the better team. You're not the better team. You're even a little injured, right? You got all this happening, but you got this young budding star, and there was so much to like about this team that was kind of like, hey, who are these guys? You know, it was the year after the Gordon Hayward thing. I mean, there was something about that, and I was around that team in Oklahoma City. I was around that team in Salt Lake, and that whole entire thing, the Paul George thing, the Russell Westbrook thing, and then
Donovan. That was the first time that I had heard from people I know around the league about Mitchell watching that playoff series, right?
Russell Westbrook saying, man, I'm going to shut that down.
Nope.
And then coming right out, and it got worse.
Yeah. And watching Donovan be the primary go-to player in the playoffs as a rookie, that was the first time I went, all right, Dennis has built something here that's going to be sustainable for a long, long time. But unfortunately, not everything can last. Hey, before I set you loose, I've not talked to you about Dan Roberts. You thought about Dan Roberts stepping down after decades of the highest of levels of a job that you know how to do.
When you are the PA announcer of an arena, you are part of the fabric that is the arena. There's the smells, there's the sound, but the sounds of Dan Roberts, there was something about running up the stairs and hearing him do a Sprite read, and you could just feel the energy and the tempo and the build-up to the game. There's so many little things you could never even know until it would take me an hour to break it all down, that made him the best in the NBA. He could feel out that every single night the crowd had a different vibe, feel. The game did it. And he would have the perfect way to use his voice and his energy perfectly. No, he was never like, I'm just going to be this way all the time, no matter what. No, he could feel it out. So when he did the college games that were there, maybe there was a lighter crowd or a more energetic crowd. I've never seen anybody perfect that better than him. There will never be anybody in the NBA better than him because he had a sense that nobody else will have. And I tried not to replicate him, but to learn that piece of the art.
Sure.
And I felt like I knew something of it, but his level, it wasn't just the experience. I mean, he had it in his earlier years. Mm-hmm. The voice, obviously, but he had more skill than I think anybody could ever give him credit for. So if you understand the art of public address announcing, you realized his skill. And so he and I have had plenty of conversations about that. And there was nothing like it. Last thing I'll say, I was supposed to host this big thing for him for a milestone game. Mm-hmm. Still have the voicemail. And he calls me up, Parks, this is Roberts, blah, blah, blah. I'm supposed to talk to you about some bleeping hoo-ha coming up tomorrow. Look, I don't want any BS. I don't want any of this. Just keep it simple, make the announcement, make sure everybody knows how much I appreciate him, and let's move to the game.
Love it. Look, man, you've got a flight to catch.
Yep.
So I appreciate your time. SLBs.com, yeah?
Yep, SLBs.com. Go there, get your tickets. Plenty of great fireworks nights coming up. Check us out at the new ballpark at America First Square.
Great to see you, my guy.
You too, man.
Tony Parks, before we catch a break, we welcome in Ryan from the Dish Pros. All you have to do is give him a call at 801-424-DISH, where you can save a grip of money on a bunch of different things. What's going on, Ryan?
Spence, thanks so much as always. You know, we love helping people saving money, and guys, the promotions and offers we have right now are really good. And with the offers that we have, where we can set you up with a new customer promotion and get you a price guarantee, it truly saves you a ton of money. Cable customers, DirecTV customers, guys, even if you're doing streaming, you probably might be able to have a better system if you call today and get the biggest, fastest DVR out there. 16 tuners, 2 terabytes of storage. You have full access to your dish content, DVR included, wherever you go. It's just so simple. You can have access on another TV like I have in another country to everything that you have at home, and including your DVR recordings. And it's just simple and easy to use. We'll get you the best deal guaranteed. And we're going to hook you up. We're going to set you up a dinner at JCW's, movie channels, have you installed for free next day. Listen, if you think you're overpaying, you probably are. Call us up. Let us hook you up and get you taken care of. Remember, we help customers all through northern Utah, all the way up into Logan. So if you're hearing us, call us, and we'll take care of you. 424-DISH, 801-424-DISH.
Ryan from the Dish Pros. We will catch a quick break. We are less than 30 minutes away from the NBA Draft Lottery. We will have ESPN Radio's live coverage right after 5 o'clock, so keep it right here on ESPN 700. All right, 20 minutes away. 20 minutes from right now, we will learn where the Utah Jazz will draft coming up in the NBA draft on June the 25th. Round 1, June the 25th. Round 2 is the 26th. It's a 2-day event now. It has been for a couple of years. We'll say goodnight a little bit earlier. We're going to send you over to ESPN Radio's live coverage of tonight's NBA draft lottery. Just a little bit of a primer and a reminder of where the Jazz are at. They have a 14% chance of landing the number 1 overall pick, as do the Wizards and the Hornets. The Pelicans have a 12.5% chance. The 76ers, 10.5%. Nets at 9%. Raptors at 7.5%. The San Antonio Spurs have a 6% chance of winning tonight's lottery. Porter, what is the reaction from the basketball world if tonight's lottery is revealed and San Antonio has moved up to draft Cooper Flagg and put him next to Victor Wembanyama?
Man, they would kind of like officially be the most fortunate team, and not only the most fortunate, but doing it well and timing it well. The fact that they went all out and tanked, not just at any point, but to get Tim Duncan, the David Robinson stuff. All of it has happened in a time frame where you got to tip your cap to him. But also, if it were to go down like that tonight, there is a large share of luck, if you want. But, man, it's an organization who's put themselves in the right position at the right times. I'll say that.
The Jazz also are guaranteed of a top 5 pick, which is really, really good news. They have a 52% chance of staying in the top 4. The last time the team with the worst record in the NBA received the number 1 overall pick was 7 years ago now. When the Phoenix Suns had the 2018 pick. In 2019, they have flattened the lottery odds, and since that day, the worst team in the NBA has not received the number 1 overall pick. So we'll have to kind of see how it goes down. But we are 18 minutes away. Well, who we got on the dais? We got Shams Charania. We got Jay Billis. Kendrick Perkins somehow continues to stay employed. I'll leave my opinion off air, or maybe I just brought it on air. It's amazing to me that dude keeps a job, but whatever. All right, Porter, let me get your take on this because I haven't talked to you about this dynamic. Shams and some others on the intrawebs have reported that if the Jazz do not get number 1 tonight, they will be very active to try to move up to number 1. Now, that's really nice in theory, but if you're running the Charlotte Hornets and the Washington Wizards and the Pelicans or whatever, it would take a lot to be the general manager who traded Cooper Flagg if all of these scouts are right on their projections, and he is a 15, 18-year NBA superstar player. What do you think that looks like? Let's say the Jazz fall to 3 or 4, and they want to move up to 1. What do you think it would take?
Yeah, man, I don't know if I see that happening. I don't know if I really see any team moving off of the number 1 pick this year. I think if it were Charlotte, you might have a little more luck than if it were Washington. That's part of the variable too, Spence, is if it's not the Jazz, who is it? Because that plays a part in if you were able to get a deal done as well. And then you have to also look at the other teams who have that kind of assets, the Oklahoma City Thunder and others who might be able to make a move to move up in the draft to get into the top 2 or 3, which is really, really where you want to be in 2025. I don't know that you see that happen this year, but what the Jazz have is as many assets as any team in the league to get into those conversations, Spence, and also get into other conversations as trade talks heat up around the draft time, because that's something that I think we have to keep our eye on. If the Jazz don't get Cooper Flagg, keep an eye on trades that don't involve Cooper Flagg as well this offseason, because the Jazz could pivot a little bit and now acquire other young talent. They could really shift off of the Jordan Clarksons, the John Collins, the others that, expiring contracts and other, to get involved in non-2025 draft trades. That's something that could very much happen during the draft as well.
So let's kind of just review some of this stuff as far as how this could potentially go down. The lottery is in Chicago, where the NBA Draft Combine is also taking place. So the Jazz, along with Washington, along with Charlotte, with the best chance of landing the number 1 overall pick. Now, remember, the lottery only determines 1 through 4. 5 through 14 is determined simply by inverse of record. So not every single slot in the NBA draft lottery is determined by this lottery as far as how it goes down. Now, again, as I referenced earlier, and this is important to keep in mind, and I usually just kind of err on the side of listening to scouts that analyze these prospects as their day-to-day job. It didn't used to be like that. Like the media game has changed a little bit where there's so many people who specialize in one element, one dynamic, not even just one sport. I mean, in college football, the ecosystem is wild. Like, if I want to talk about a Utah football high school recruit, I'm going to listen to the recruiting services that have watched this kid play since he was 14 or whatever. I'm not going to, try to analyze some kid I've seen 5 or 6 times. So when you read what the scouts have to say about the NBA draft this year, I feel like most people believe it's a 4-player, game-changing franchise piece potential draft, okay? So the worst-case scenario, if I could just say the most obvious thing that I could say in the microphone, if the Jazz fall to 5 this year, that's where – and look, maybe Trey Johnson turns out to be a steal, right? But when you read about most of the rankings and most of the analysis, it's a 1-tier draft with Cooper Flagg at the top. And then I think there are a lot of people there are some – media members and people that cover the league that really just try to zig when everyone else is zagging. Like when Wembanyama was available, we'd have guests on the show like, hey, I kind of like Scoot. And you're like, dude, don't do that. I don't think there's anybody who has been as audacious about Dylan Harper as they were about Scoot Henderson. He was a fine young player, but not near the game-changing player that Victor Wembanyama is. So 1 tier at the top, Cooper Flagg, he's on the tier by himself. But I do think there are a lot of people that seem to believe Dylan Harper at 2 has a chance to be a game-changing franchise pillar. And he does the more and more I watch Dylan Harper, I was watching some last night, he does remind me of Cade Cunningham. And I don't love the comp thing, but I do think it gives fans and folks that are just curious kind of an idea of what these players are going to look like. So Cooper at 1, Dylan at 2. I think a lot of people believe Ace Bailey is the 3rd best prospect. We had Tom Haberstroh on earlier that said he would go VJ Edgecombe. But
bless you.
Say something intelligent real quick.
Bless you. I will say, while I'm not one who is going to zig while everyone is zagging, I do like Harper. Really good defender. You mentioned the Cade Cunningham comp. Just kind of a prototype of what you want as a wing scorer, but doesn't dominate the ball, really. I don't know if that's smart enough, but
it was very intelligent. And by the way, that's a huge upset that I only sneezed once. I usually, like, if I'm sneezing, you're getting 3 or 4.
Well,
the fact that I only had 1 there is a huge upset.
It's part of your job. You gotta keep it on air.
It's true, but only had 1 sneeze there. Anyway, back to what I was saying. I feel like if the Jazz stay in the top 4, they are going to get a player that the fan base is going to like a lot. To Porter's point about Dylan Harper, Ace is a project, but man, is he built exactly the way you want your modern-day NBA wing to be built. And he's 6'10", 6'11", but he can handle it. He's more of a wing. And then BYU fans remember VJ Edgecombe. He had a really good game in Provo this year. But then, from everything I've read at least, it appears that there's a drop-off between 4 and 5. So Cooper Flagg, Dylan Harper, Ace Bailey, VJ Edgecombe, according to what most scouts seem to be reporting and talking about, are all players that you can get really excited about. It's if the Jazz fall to 5 tonight where the wind will just go out of the sails. Now, of course, you want 1, bottom line. But as we talked about earlier today, the news that Giannis Antetokounmpo is now willing to find a new place to play. And Mark Lazary, a very classy owner, he owns the Milwaukee Bucks. That's a good front office. They're, good reputation for doing right by their players. They'll work in lockstep together. Now, at the end of the day, the job of the front office is to simply do what's right for the organization and do what's right for the city. But a guy like Giannis is different because he brought Milwaukee their first title, I think, in 50 years. Okay. So, I drew the parallel between Kevin Garnett a little bit earlier. Garnett gave Minnesota a decade of high-quality elite play, and they could never surround him with the talent that he needed at his disposal to win championships. So he went to Minnesota, said, look, I gave you a decade. I'd like to land with a contender. Danny Ainge trades for him in Boston, and, of course, the rest is history. That was a really good team with Paul Pierce and Ray Allen and KG. This feels a little bit similar, where Giannis gave Milwaukee 12 years, brought them a championship, and still to this day, like it's different now. I think with the habits that a lot of players have and the ability to take care of their body a little bit differently. Like LeBron's played at a high level into his 40s. And I keep hearing people say, well, Giannis is 30. He's running out of time. I don't think Giannis is running out of time at all. With the way that dude takes care of his body, I think we could see Giannis play high-level basketball for another decade. So I bring it up because the teams that have been talked about today that could realistically make a play for Giannis are very similar, some of them at least, to where the Jazz find themselves. A rebuilding team with a compendium of draft assets, clean books, and some decent young players. But nobody's talking about the Jazz as an option because you hear teams like Oklahoma City and San Antonio and Houston, teams with some draft capital but also good players. Because Milwaukee's going to want, I used this hypothetical earlier, and I actually do think you consider it. Jalen Williams, Chet Holmgren, 4 or 5 picks for Giannis. Then you put Giannis next to Shea for a decade, and Oklahoma City would be even more impossible than they are right now. The Jazz do not have the package to match what other teams could offer for Giannis, unless in 10 minutes from right now, the lottery luck goes their way, the ping pong balls bounce the way they need to, and the Jazz get number 1 overall. Then you can enter into conversations for Giannis or Durant or Booker or whoever. So, 10 minutes away, Porter, let's get out of here before we say goodnight. What comes our way at a Tuesday edition of the show?
Yeah, man, on a Tuesday show, of course, we will react to the NBA Draft Lottery. Andy Larson, he'll be live at the NBA Combine as well. Tim McMahon stops by for the NBA Daily Assist. An hour with Richard Smitty Smith. So a lot of basketball, a lot of Jazz offseason. We'll chat with Lemateo, all Poly Camp and some college football as well. But all hoops as we react to the Draft Lottery next, and the Knicks and Celtics after that.
There you go. So fun night of NBA basketball. The Draft Lottery comes your way coming up on the other side. Special thank you today to Kurt Schmidt, Tom Haberstone, Tony Parks for any of the sound. Go to the website, check out our podcast page, and download the app. For Porter, I'm Spence saying goodnight. NBA Draft Lottery comes your way coming up after a quick break right here on ESPN 700, 92.1 FM. We are proud to be part of Utah's ESPN Radio Network.